Story 1. It's in the photographs. I want to start with the beach picture because that is the one that broke the ordinary part of my life cleanly in half. And I need you to understand how small it was. Not a scream, not a slammed door, a shape at the edge of a photograph that had been on my wall for 9 years. It is the third frame from the top of the stairs on the long wall in my hallway, where I keep all of it, my whole life, in rows. My mother hung her photographs the same way, in the house I grew up in, and I do it because she did it, and I never once thought about it until the night I am telling you about. The beach picture is Cape May. The summer I was 31, my sister and me squinting into the sun with our arms around each other and a striped umbrella behind us, and the water past that, flat and bright, and nobody else close. Nobody else close. There were people way down the beach, the way there always are. Little dark commas on the sand near the waterline, too far to be anything but weather. I framed that picture myself. I chose it out of 40 others because the light was good and because it was empty behind us. Just sand and sky, and my sister laughing with her eyes shut. That night, I was going up to bed with a glass of water, and I stopped on the landing the way you do, half looking at things you have stopped seeing, and one of the little dark commas on the sand was not on the sand anymore. It was up on the dry part, in the grass line where the dunes start, closer than the others. And it was not lying down the way people lie on a beach. It was standing. Standing. And I thought, though I told myself I was tired, facing us, I stood on that landing for a long time, long enough that the water in my glass went still. I am a person who notices things. That is the whole trouble with me. I have always been the one who sees the crack in the ceiling before anyone else. The one who says the picture on the restaurant wall is crooked and cannot enjoy dinner until they let me fix it. So I want to be fair to myself and tell you I did the reasonable thing first. I took the frame off the wall. I carried it into the good light of the bathroom. I looked at it with my reading glasses, then with the magnifier for my sewing kit, the one I use for splinters. It was a person, small, far, but a person, standing in the dune grass behind us. Dark clothes. You could not see a face, only that the head was turned the right way, turned toward the camera, toward the two of us with our backs to the water. And I told myself, the way you tell yourself things at 11 at night when you want to go to sleep, that it had always been there. That in 9 years, I had simply never looked at the top corner of a photograph of my sister and me. That is a thing that is possible. That is a thing that happens. You do not study your own pictures. You glance at them, and you feel the warm thing, and you move on. So I hung it back up, a little crooked, which for me is a confession of how rattled I was, and I went to bed. And I lay there listing all the times I could have looked and did not, building the case for a figure that had stood in that grass for 9 years waiting for me to finally see it. I almost got away with that. I want you to know I almost let it go. But I am precise. It is a sickness with me. And in the morning, in daylight, with coffee, I got the shoebox down from the closet, the one with the doubles in it, because back then you got doubles, 2 of every print, and I had kept them. I found the second copy of the Cape May picture, the twin of the one on my wall, and I put them side by side on the kitchen table under the window where the light is honest. In the shoebox copy, the dune grass was empty, just grass. The little dark commas were all down by the water where they belonged. I sat with those 2 identical photographs, printed the same hour from the same roll, and one had a person standing in the grass and one did not, and the coffee went cold in front of me, and I remember thinking very clearly in a calm, flat voice that did not sound like panic yet, well, that settles that then. Whatever this is, it is in the one on the wall. That was the last calm thought I had for a long time. Let me tell you about the wall, because you have to see it to understand what the following weeks did to me. It runs the length of the upstairs hall, from the top of the stairs to the linen closet, maybe 14 feet, and it is full. 40-some frames, hung close, edge near edge, the way my mother did it. My whole life in an order I know by heart because I put it there. My parents' wedding at the bottom by the light switch, black and white. My father in a rented jacket. Me as a baby on a blanket in a yard I do not remember. First day of school, gap-toothed. My sister and me at every age. Prom, and I will not describe the dress. College, my wedding. And then the frame next to it that used to be my wedding and is now a picture of the lake house, because you learn to swap a frame instead of leaving a hole. And a hole in a gallery wall is its own kind of grief that people ask about. My nephews as newborns, red and furious. My mother at 70 in her garden, the last good summer, before the diagnosis, holding a tomato up to the camera like a trophy. I could walk that hall blind and tell you what hangs at the height of my hand. That is the thing I want you to hold on to. I knew that wall the way you know the inside of your own mouth. So I did not need a magnifier to know, 3 nights later, that it was in the garden picture too. My mother, 70, in the sun, holding up her tomato. And back behind the tomato stakes, in the dark green between the pole beans, a standing shape. Dark. Head turned toward the camera, toward her back. Nobody was in my mother's garden that day, but the two of us. I took that picture. I was standing where the shape was standing. I know I was, because you cannot be in two places, and the geometry of it, the angle of the beans, put that figure exactly where my own feet had been when I raised the camera and told my mother to hold the tomato higher. So now it was in two. I am going to try to tell this in order, because order is the only thing that kept me sane, and losing the order is how I finally came apart. I started a notebook. Of course I did. Green cover, from the drawer in the kitchen where the takeout menus live. I wrote the date at the top, and then I did an inventory. I went down the whole wall with the green notebook, and I wrote every frame, top to bottom, left to right, and beside each one I wrote Clear, or I wrote a description. That first inventory, 4 nights in, I had two, the garden. 2 figures, both far back, both dark, both facing the wrong way, which is to say, facing the people in the picture, which is to say, facing my sister, facing my mother. I slept with the hall light on. I am a grown woman with a mortgage, and I slept with the hall light on like I was 9, because the dark at the top of the stairs had started to feel occupied. The 5th night, it was in 3. The new one was my nephew's 1st birthday. Cake all over his face, my brother-in-law laughing, and in the doorway of my sister's kitchen, half in the next room, a standing dark shape where no adult had been standing, because everyone who was there was in the frame, all of us crowded in for the cake. I know because I remember that party. I remember there was no one in the doorway. I remember the doorway was how we got to the bathroom, and it was empty all afternoon. And here is the thing I noticed with the 5th night, the thing that took the last of the air out of me. It was not just appearing, it was moving. Not in front of my eyes, I never once saw it move. I want to be honest, I never saw a single frame change while I watched it, but across the pictures, night over night, it was closer. In Cape May, it had been up in the dune grass, far. Now, 4 nights later, when I checked Cape May again, it was off the grass and onto the sand, maybe 40 feet behind us instead of 100. In the garden, it had come out from between the beam poles to the edge of the vegetable bed. It was closing distance in every photograph it lived in, a little each night, the way the minute hand of a clock is never seen to move, and yet you look up and the afternoon is gone. I did the thing you would do. I called my sister. I did not tell her the truth. Because how? So I said I was going through old pictures, and did she remember anyone else being at the Cape May trip, anyone joining us on the beach? And she said no. It was just us. That was the whole point of that trip. Just us after her divorce. And I said, did she remember anyone in the doorway at the birthday? And she laughed and said, honey, that doorway was a superhighway all day, and for one bright second I thought, there, an explanation, And then she said, "Why?" And I said, "No reason." And I got off the phone and I stood in the hall and looked at the doorway shape, and it was not a person going to the bathroom. A person going to the bathroom does not stand still, facing you in the dark of the next room, in every copy, getting nearer every night while the party stays frozen around them. I took the pictures down, all the ones it was in. I thought plainly, if it lives in these three, I will put these three away, and the wall will be clean, and I will not have to look. I took Kate May in the garden and the birthday off the wall, and I felt the enormous relief of a decision, and I carried them down to the kitchen, and I put them face down in a drawer under the dish towels, and I made myself tea, and I sat in the clean-walled quiet, with 3 fresh nails and 3 pale rectangles where the pictures had been. I want to be very clear about the next part, because it is the part I understand the least. The next night, it was in the picture beside where Kate May had hung, not the drawer. I checked the drawer, my hand shaking, and yes, it was still in the 3 in the drawer, still there. A little closer, even in the dark of a kitchen drawer, which I cannot explain and have stopped trying to. But it had also appeared in the neighbor, the frame that had hung next to Kate May. My college graduation, me in the gown, my parents on either side, and behind us on the quad, among the crowd of other families, one figure not part of any family turned the wrong way, facing my back. It had not been there the day before. I had written clear next to that frame in the green notebook in my own careful hand. Clear. It was spreading, taking the empty rectangle I had made for it as an invitation. Or maybe it did not care about the wall at all. Maybe I had misunderstood the whole geometry of it. Maybe it was never in the picture so much as behind them, behind all of them, and it was simply choosing which glass to stand behind on which night. Removing a picture did not remove it. Removing a picture just told it which frame to try next. So I stopped removing. I put Kate May in the garden and the birthday back up, because leaving them down was worse. Leaving them down felt like turning my back on something in the middle of a sentence. I put them back in their exact places, and I straightened them, and my hands were steady by then, which frightened me more than the shaking had, because steadiness meant I was getting used to it. I changed my approach. I decided, if it lives on this wall, I will study the wall. I will know it better than it knows itself. I will catch it. Every night before bed, I inventoried the whole hall in the green notebook, every frame, and I logged the position of the figure in each one it inhabited, using the people in the photo as landmarks. In Kate May, level with the umbrella now, 20 feet back. In the garden, at the tomato stakes, right behind her. In the birthday, through the doorway and into the kitchen, near the counter, near the cake, near the child. That one made me put the pen down for a while. It was in 7 pictures by the end of the first week. Then 9. Then it seemed to steady around a dozen, always the ones with the most people in them, the fullest frames, the crowded ones, as if it liked a crowd to stand in the back of. It never appeared in the ones of just objects, the lake house, the sunset over the reservoir. It wanted the people ones. It wanted to stand behind the people I loved. And in each of them, night over night, it came forward. I stopped needing the notebook to see it. I could stand at the top of the stairs and take in the whole wall at once, the way you take in a face and see it in a dozen backgrounds at a dozen distances, all of them closing, a slow tide coming up, a slow beach in 12 places at once. I want to describe it now, as much as I can, because I have been avoiding it. It is tall. Taller than the people in the frames, or it stands taller, very straight. Dark, but not black. More the dark of a coat you have worn so long you no longer know what color it was. No face I could ever make out, even close, even with the magnifier, even when it stood right at the shoulder of my mother in the garden, because the head, when it was near enough that I should have seen a face, was somehow always the part that stayed unresolved. A smear, a place my eye could not land, like the spot in your vision you cannot look directly at. But the posture told me everything the face would not. Attentive, leaning very slightly forward from the waist, the way a person leans when they are extremely interested in something small, the way you lean over a crib, the way you lean to read a name tag. It was interested in us, in me, by then, because I had understood by the second week that the pictures were only the road it was walking, and I was the town at the end of it. I know how this sounds. I knew it then. I made myself say it out loud in the daylight, standing in my ordinary kitchen with my ordinary hand around an ordinary mug. There is a thing coming toward me through my photographs, and I cannot stop it. And I do not know what happens when it arrives. Saying it did not make it sound crazier. That was the worst part. Saying it in the sun made it sound like a fact, like the price of milk, like something that was simply true and did not care whether I believed it. I tried the doubles again. I got the whole shoebox out and I went through it, matching every double to every frame on the wall, checking each pair the way I had checked Cape May that first morning. Every double was clean. Every one. My history was intact in the shoebox, unhaunted, empty of it. The beach empty, the garden empty, the doorway empty, and only the framed versions, the ones on the wall, the ones I looked at, carried the figure. And I sat on the kitchen floor with 50 clean doubles fanned around me, and I thought, so it is not in the pictures, it is in the looking. It comes into the ones I look at. The shoebox is safe because I do not look at the shoebox, my mother's wall, my habit, 40 frames arranged for looking at. That is what it uses. My own eyes hang these pictures. My own eyes are the wall. I got rid of my phone's camera roll that night. I do not know why. Panic logic. I sat and deleted years of pictures off my phone, terrified it would be in those too, and I found it in maybe half of them. And I deleted them, and I felt sick and hollow the way you feel when you have done a violent thing that solves nothing. Because the wall was still the wall. The phone was a side road. The wall was the highway, and it was most of the way down it. Here is where I made the mistake. That I think, looking back, was the mistake. Though I am not sure any of it was ever mine to get right. It was in 12 pictures, all my old ones, all my history. And I thought, it is only in the old ones. It is only in the pictures of the past. What if I gave it nothing new? What if I bought a brand new frame and put a brand new picture in it, taken today, in this house, with nothing behind me but a clean wall, and hung it up? A picture from after it started. A picture it could not already be standing in the back of. Because I would take it myself. I would control every inch of the background. I would stand against a blank wall in an empty room with the door locked, and I would absolutely know, that there was no one behind me. I drove to the store. I remember the drive. I remember it felt like doing something, like fighting. And I had not felt like I was fighting in 2 weeks. I had only felt like I was being read. I bought a plain black frame, 4x6, and a pack of photo paper. And I came home and I set my phone against the stack of books on a kitchen counter, facing the blank white wall by the back door, the emptiest wall in the house, a wall with nothing on it, a wall I chose because it was nothing. I stood against it. I checked behind me first, physically turned and looked, ran my hand along the wall. Stupid, but I did it. Nothing. An empty kitchen at 4 in the afternoon with the sun coming in. I set the timer. I stood against the blank white wall, and I made myself smile because some animal part of me wanted the picture to look normal, wanted to look like a woman who was fine, and the phone counted down and clicked. I printed it on the photo paper. I trimmed it. I put it in the new black frame, and I did not look at it closely while I did any of this. I made myself wait. I wanted to hang it first and look at it, the way I look at everything, on the wall, in its place. I carried it upstairs, and I found a spot at the end of the row, past my mother's garden, a fresh nail in fresh plaster, and I hung it, the newest picture, the only picture in my whole life taken after the thing began, a picture of me alone against a blank white wall, and I stepped back and I looked. It was behind me, against the blank white wall that I had checked with my own hand, that had nothing on it, in an empty kitchen with the door locked, standing at my shoulder, leaning very slightly forward from the waist. That place where its face should be a smear I could not hold my eyes on. Closer in that 4x6 than it was in any picture on the wall, close enough that if it had hands, and I could not see hands, they would have been at the level of my arms. In the picture I took to prove I was alone. It had not needed the past. It had never needed the past. The past was just where I happened to keep looking. Give it a new picture, and it is in the new one. Give it a picture of an empty wall, and it fills the wall. I did not sleep that night at all. I sat at the top of the stairs on the floor with my back against the linen closet and the hall light on, and I looked at the whole wall, all of it, my entire life in rows, and it in a dozen, and then a dozen in one, and I understood that there was no move left that was a move. Remove them, it takes the neighbor. Study them, it comes forward while you study. Take a new one, it is in the new one before the ink is dry. There was no drawer deep enough, no wall blank enough, no picture new enough. The looking was the door, and I could not stop looking. Because a person who stops looking at the thing coming for her is not brave. She is just blind when it arrives. Toward morning, I did the thing that I still cannot decide was despair or courage. I went down the wall one last time with the green notebook to log the positions, because logging was the only control I had ever had, and I wanted, if this was the last night, to have written it all down. And I went picture to picture, and in Cape May, it was directly behind us, my sister and me, at our very shoulders. That lean, that interest. In the garden, it was pressed to my mother's back. In the birthday, it was over the child, over the cake, leaning down. In the graduation, it was between my parents. In every picture on that wall, it had arrived at the people. It was as close as it could be to each of them. In each frame, all at once, a dozen versions of the same forward lean, a dozen smears where a face would not resolve, all of it right at the shoulder of everyone I have ever loved, and the only images I have of them. Some of them gone now, my mother gone now, and it's standing behind her in the last good summer with its interest and its lean, having walked the whole length of my history to get to her back. And then I came to the last frame, the new one. The 4x6 in the plain black frame at the end of the row, me against the blank white wall. It was clean. I want you to understand what that meant to me in the second before I understood what it meant. For one heartbeat I thought, relief? Oh, thank God, it's gone from the new one. It left. And then the floor went out from under that thought. Because I know how this works now. I have learned the grammar of it over 3 weeks in a hallway. And there is only one reason a figure that has been coming forward, night over night, closer in every frame, arriving at last right behind the woman in the picture, would then not be in the picture at all. It is not in the photograph anymore, because it has come the rest of the way. I am sitting at the top of my stairs. It is not quite light out. The hall is empty. The wall is full. The wall is my whole life, and every person in it has that dark, attentive shape leaning at their shoulder. Every one of them but the last. And the last is clean. The last is just me against a blank white wall. Alone. The way I made sure I was. The way I checked with my own hand. I have not turned around. I have been facing the wall this whole time, writing this, telling you, because I am a person who notices things. And the one thing I have not let myself notice is the cold that has been standing behind me since the light in the last picture went empty. I can feel the lean of it. That slight forward lean from the waist at my shoulder, the interest of it, so close. And if it has hands, I still cannot see them. But I do not need to see them to know where they are now. The wall is full of it. The last picture is empty of it. And I finally understand the difference between those two things. And I understand it far, far too late. And I am not going to turn around. I am going to keep looking at the wall, at all of them, at my mother in her garden, holding up her tomato in the sun with that dark lean behind her. I am going to keep my eyes on the pictures where it used to be, because the pictures are the only place left that it is not. Let me tell you the rest of it slowly, the way it happened. Because there is more, and I need to say it while I still can hold the order. because the order is going. The first week, before I understood any of it, I did ordinary things. I want you to know, I lived a life around this. I went to work. I am a records clerk at the county, which is a joke I have made to myself 100 times in the last weeks. A woman who spends her days keeping things in order and her nights watching order dissolve one photograph at a time. I filed deeds. I ate lunch at my desk. I came home to the hall. That is the shape of it. Nothing about the daylight ever slipped. The figure never came into my office, never stood at the end of the break room, never leaned at anyone's shoulder in the fluorescent middle of the afternoon. It stayed in the hall. It stayed in the pictures. It waited in its way, though I am careful now not to call it patient, because patient is a soft word, and there was nothing soft in it. There was only appetite moving at the speed it had chosen, which was slow because slow was enough, because I was not going anywhere and it knew it. I lived in the same house as the pictures. Where would I go? I did think about going. The second week I packed a bag. I stood in my bedroom with a duffel half full of shirts and I thought, I will go to my sister's, I will sleep in her guest room, and I got as far as the top of the stairs with the bag, and I looked at the wall, and I understood that I could not leave it, not because it would follow, though I believed it would, but because the pictures were my mother and my father and my sister at every age, and my nephews and every version of me that had ever been, and if I left, it would be alone in the house with all of them, leaning at their shoulders in the dark for as long as I stayed away, and I could not do that. I could not leave them with it. I know they are only photographs. I know my mother is gone and cannot be reached through a pane of framed glass. I know that. But I put the bag down. You do not leave your dead alone in a dark house with a thing that is interested in them. You just do not. I stayed. There was a night in the second week I have not told you about when I tried to talk to it. I feel foolish writing it down. But I stood in the hall at 3 a.m, the hour my mother always called the low tide of the night, and I said out loud to the wall, "What do you want?" My voice sounded terrible, and of course nothing answered. It is not a thing that answers, it is a thing that arrives, and the silence after my own voice was so total that I could hear the frames, the tiny sounds a wall of glass and wood makes, ticking, settling, and I swear to you one of them, down at the bottom, my parents' wedding, made a small sound like a held breath let go, and I did not look. I went to bed, and in the morning it was in the wedding too, in the church behind them, in the last pew leaning, and it had not been there the night before, and I understood that asking it what it wanted had only shown it a new room to walk into. I stopped talking to it after that. The thing about the closing distance that I keep coming back to is how gentle the increments were, and how that gentleness was the cruelest part, because it never gave me a night that was different enough to run from. If I had come up the stairs one evening and found it standing full forward at my mother's shoulder, where the night before it had been a dot in the beans, I would have burned the wall. I would have, but it never did that. It moved the width of a finger. It moved the distance you could always argue you had misremembered, and by the time you could not argue, it had covered 100 feet of dune grass and half a garden and the whole length of a kitchen. And you were still standing there measuring because it had taught you, without ever meaning to teach you anything. That measuring was all you could do. That is what the notebook was. The notebook was me being trained to hold still and watch and record while the tide came in. I filled 14 pages. I have them here. The handwriting on the last pages is not my careful hand anymore. It slants. It presses through the paper. I went to the drugstore that developed the doubles, back when, the one that is a phone store now, as if a building could still hold the answer. I do not know what I expected. I stood in the parking lot. A place is just a place. There is nothing in a parking lot. I even, near the end, took the pictures out of their frames. All of it. One manic afternoon, I disassembled the whole wall, prized open the little metal tabs, slid every photograph out of every frame, because some desperate part of me thought the frames were the trap. The glass was the trap. The thing lived in the space between the print and the glass, and if I freed the prints, it would have nowhere to stand. I made a stack of 40-some naked photographs on the hall floor, and 40-some empty frames beside them, and I sat in the wreck of my own life. And I went through the loose prints one by one in the plain daylight from the landing window. It was in every one it had been in, on the loose prints. No glass, no frame, just paper in my hand, and there it was on the paper, closer than it had been that morning, because handling them, looking at them one by one that close, had only fed it. I was the trap. My looking was the trap. I put the prints back in the frames because a loose photograph felt even more exposed, an open wound, and I hung the whole wall back up in the right order because the order was the last thing that was mine, and by then it was evening, and I had spent an entire day teaching the thing that there was no container I could put my family in that it could not stand behind. There's one more thing from the third week I have to put down because it is the only time anyone else came near it, and it told me something I did not want to know. My neighbor Ruth came by with a casserole, the way she does, because I had told her I was under the weather, which was true in a way she could not have understood. I let her in. I did not want to, but you cannot turn away a woman with a casserole without her deciding something is wrong, and I needed her to decide nothing. She stood in my front hall talking about her knee and her daughter's divorce, and then she started up the stairs to use the bathroom. And I felt my heart go up into my throat, because she would have to walk the whole length of the wall, and I did not know what she would see. She stopped halfway down the hall. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and watched her stop and look, and I could not breathe. She was looking right at the garden picture, my mother in the tomato, the one where it was pressed to my mother's back by then, leaning so close. Ruth looked at it for a long moment, and then she said, "Oh, that's a lovely one of your mom. She had such a green thumb," and she went on to the bathroom. She had not seen it. She had looked directly at the shape leaning at my mother's shoulder, and her eyes had passed over it, the way your eyes pass over the frame, the wall, the nail, the things that are simply there and mean nothing. It was not in the picture for Ruth. It was only in the picture for me. And I stood at the bottom of my own stairs and understood that whatever this was, it was not on the wall in any way that a casserole and a bad knee could reach. It was in the space between the pictures and my eyes, and I was the only one standing in that space. And I always would be. And there was no one I could show it to. No one who could stand in the hall and say, "Yes, I see it too. You are not losing your mind." I was going to be alone in the looking all the way to the end of it. Ruth washed her hands and came down and said the casserole was chicken and rice and heated at 350, and she left. And I locked the door behind her and I put my forehead against the wood. And I did not cry. I was past crying by then. I just stood there and let the fact of my aloneness settle over me, like the dust settles in a room no one comes into. And now it is the morning I told you about. The light not quite up, the last picture clean, the cold at my back. I have understood, sitting here, one more thing, and I will tell you. And then I think I am going to have to stop, because I can feel that the writing is the last of the looking. The writing is my eyes on the wall. And when I stop writing, I will have to do the other thing, the turning, or the not turning, and I do not know which yet. The thing I understood is this. All those nights I thought it was coming toward the people in the pictures, toward my sister on the beach, my mother in the garden, the child at the cake. I thought I was watching it hunt them, the ones I loved, frozen and unable to run inside their own frames. And I was so afraid for them, my helpless dead, my sister who does not know, the baby who is a grown boy now. But it was never walking toward them. They were only what stood between it and the camera. And the camera was me, the one holding it, the one looking. In every single photograph, the person at the very front, the person whose back is to all of it, the person the figure is truly leaning toward across all that distance, is not in the frame at all. It is the one taking the picture. It is the one on this side of the glass. It has been coming toward the photographer this whole time. It has been walking through 40 years of my life toward the place where I stand. and I am standing here. The last picture is empty because it has finished the walk. There is no more distance in any photograph left to cross. The wall is full of the thing that used to be far away, and the newest frame, the one of just me against a blank white wall, is clean and bright and empty. And I keep my eyes on it, on the smiling woman against the white, alone. The way I made so sure that she was alone. And I understand that the picture is not empty. The picture is finished. I can feel the lean of it at my shoulder. I have run out of pictures to look at. There is a cold like the inside of a well, and a stillness like held breath, and I am not going to turn around. I am going to keep looking at the wall. I am going to keep my eyes on my mother in her last good summer, holding her tomato up to the sun, and I am going to think about her hands and not about the hands I cannot see. And I am going to stay very still, the way it taught me, the way I learned so well, and I am going to keep looking straight ahead at all the places it used to be. It is not in the photographs anymore. I know exactly where it is. Story 2. The Surveyor's Marks. The first flag went in on a Tuesday, and I did not think anything of it, because that is the kind of thing you are trained not to think about. I want to start there because it matters. I am not a woman who jumps at shadows. I spent 19 years doing accounts payable for a countertop and cabinet supplier, which means I spent 19 years reconciling numbers that other people got wrong and being calm about it. You do not last in that job if you are the type to see a discrepancy and decide it means something. A discrepancy almost always means somebody transposed 2 digits or filed the invoice in the wrong month. You find it, you fix it, you move on. That is the whole shape of how my mind works. So when I walked out to the mailbox that Tuesday morning and saw a little orange flag on a wire stem stuck into the grass at the edge of my yard, near where the gravel of the county road meets my lawn, I read it the way I would read a line item. Somebody is doing work. Gas, water, cable. They mark before they dig. Everybody knows that. Call before you dig, the commercials say. So I did not think anything of it. The house is out past the edge of town, on a 2-lane road with a name and a number both, County Road 9, though nobody local calls it that. I bought it 4 years ago with the settlement money after the divorce, which is a sentence I can say now without my voice doing anything. It is a plain house. 1970s ranch, brick on the bottom third and pale siding above, a carport instead of a garage, an acre and a quarter of yard that runs back to a tree line and a drainage ditch. There is no reason to want it and no reason not to. It was cheap and it was mine, and after a marriage where nothing had been only mine, that was the entire appeal. I am telling you all of this so you understand that I chose this. Nobody put me here. That will matter later, at least to me. So, the flag. Orange. The kind of orange they make on purpose so your eye cannot skip it, on a stiff wire maybe 15 inches tall, with a little rectangle of vinyl at the top that fluttered when the wind came off the fields. I looked at it, and I looked up and down the road for a truck, or a van, or a man in a vest, and there was nothing. And I got my mail, 2 catalogs and a water bill, and I went back inside. That is the honest record of my first response. Mild, incurious. A woman noticing that somebody is going to run a line. There were 3 of them by Thursday. The second and third had come in overnight, or in a part of the day I was not looking, and they made a rough line. Not the road, not the ditch, but a line of their own, angling in from the corner of the property toward the house at maybe 30 degrees off the road. I remember standing at the end of the driveway with my coffee going cold and following that line with my eyes, out from the first flag by the mailbox, to a second one 20 feet in, to a third one 20 feet past that, and the fourth point where the line was heading was not any part of the yard where you would put a pipe. It was heading at the corner of my house, at the actual corner of the actual building where the brick turns. I want to be precise about what I felt, because I've thought about it a great deal since. It was not fear. It was the specific irritation of a person who keeps a tidy ledger and has found something that does not reconcile. Pipes go to the house, sure, but they come from the road at the meter, and my meter is on the other side by the carport. This line was coming in at an angle that served nothing. It was the angle of a line drawn by somebody who did not care where my house's utilities were, because my house's utilities were not what the line was about. I called the county on Friday. I'm going to tell you about the phone calls in some detail, because the phone calls are the part where a normal person, a sensible person, tries to make the world reconcile, and the world declines. The county road department had me on hold for 11 minutes, and then a woman named Sandra told me, pleasantly, that they had no work orders on County Road 9, none scheduled, none in progress, nothing in the queue for the whole quarter. I asked about the gas company and she gave me the number. The gas company told me the same thing in a different voice. No locate requests, no tickets, nothing filed. They asked if I had called 801 myself, the dig line, and I said no, I had not called anyone. I was calling because somebody had put flags in my yard. The man on the gas line went quiet for a second and then said, in the tone of a person reading from a screen, that there were no active locate tickets at my address, and that if I saw marks I had not authorized, I should feel free to remove them. Remove them. That is what he said, as if they were litter, as if the problem was aesthetic. I want you to sit with how reasonable everyone was. Nobody was alarmed. Nobody said, that is strange, ma'am. Let me send someone. They said, in effect, those are not ours. And the absence of ownership did not trouble them at all, because a flag in a yard is beneath the threshold of things that trouble a utility company. It troubled me, but I had nothing to hand them that would make it trouble them, because all I had was 3 orange flags and a feeling. And you cannot open a ticket on a feeling. So I did what the gas man told me to do. On Saturday morning, I went out and I pulled the flags. All 3. I gripped the wire down low and worked it out of the ground, and I remember the first one came out with a little plug of dirt on the point, and I stood there holding it. This cheerful piece of orange vinyl on a wire, feeling faintly ridiculous, and I carried all 3 around to the trash can by the carport, and I dropped them in and I put the lid on. Done. Reconciled. A woman had made a small mess of her yard, and the woman had cleaned it up. They were back Sunday. Not the same 3. 6 now. And they had corrected. That is the word I keep coming back to, and I want to be careful with it because it is a strong word. They had corrected. The line that had been running at 30 degrees toward the corner of the house was gone, and in its place was a cleaner line, a truer one, that ran from the mailbox straight back along the property and turned, at a right angle, near the middle of the yard, and headed for the back door. The flags I had pulled were not replaced in their old holes. The whole survey had been redone, better, as if my removal of the first attempt had been useful information. As if I had flagged an error in a draft and the draft had been revised to account for it. And with the flags this time, there were stakes. Wooden ones, the kind you buy in a bundle at a hardware store, driven flush and neat, each with a band of orange spray paint around the top and a number written on it in black marker. Not big numbers. Sequence numbers. 14. Going up as the line went back toward my house. I did not pull them that day. I stood in my own yard on a Sunday morning in the kind of clean early light that makes everything look ordinary, and I counted the stakes, and I read the numbers, and for the first time, I felt the thing I would come to know very well over the following weeks. It is not fear exactly. Fear has a face. Fear is about a thing that means you harm. This was closer to the feeling of standing in a road you did not know was a road, and hearing, far off, something large coming, and understanding all at once that the road does not know you are on it, that whatever is coming is not coming for you. It is simply coming, along the line. It was always going to travel, and you happened to be standing on the line. I need to explain the numbers, because the numbers are what took the last of my composure, and it took a while. They started at low numbers out by the road and climbed as they came toward the house, which is normal. That is how you number a survey, station by station. But they did not start at 1. The stake nearest the road, the first one on my property, was numbered 14, which meant that the count had begun somewhere out past my mailbox, somewhere down the road, on land that was not mine, and had been marching this direction, station by station, 1 through 13, before it ever reached me. My property was not the beginning of the survey. It was somewhere in the middle. The measuring had started long before it got to me, and it was going to continue long after it passed through. I drove down the road that afternoon, slow, watching the shoulders. There were no flags anywhere else. No stakes in the Hendersons' place a half-mile down. None by the church. None in the long, empty stretch of soybean field between. Wherever stations 1 through 13 were, they were not on the road. They were on the line. And the line ran through fields and a ditch and a stand of trees and a house, my house, indifferent to all of it, the way a latitude runs through a city without caring what it passes over. I started keeping a notebook. That is the accounts payable in me. When the world will not reconcile, you at least keep the record clean so that later, when it does reconcile, you can show your work. I wrote the date. I wrote how many flags and stakes and where, and the numbers on the stakes, and I drew a little map of the yard each day with the marks on it. I am glad I did, because the notebook is the only thing that lets me be sure I am not misremembering the pace. The pace is the part that people do not believe. The pace is the part that made a woman who reconciles invoices for a living start sleeping with the hall light on. It advanced. That is the plain fact the notebook shows. Every few days, the line came further in. By the end of the second week, the stakes had reached the back edge of the lawn, where the mowed grass gives way to the rougher stuff near the ditch, and the number on the furthest stake was 26. There was chalk now, too. Blue chalk, snapped down in a straight line. The way a carpenter snaps a chalk line on a board, laid right across my grass between two of the stakes. A hard blue line maybe 40 feet long, that no rain had put there, and no machine I'd ever seen could put there without leaving tracks. And there were no tracks. The ground around each new stake was undisturbed, as if the stake had grown there, as if the chalk line had simply become true one night. The way a fact becomes true, without anyone having to come and make it so. I called a surveyor, a real one, a man named Doyle with a business in town, licensed, listed. I paid him to come out, and this is one of the few times in this whole account where another human being stood in my yard and looked at the same thing I was looking at, and I have held on to it because it proved I was not making the marks myself in my sleep, which by then was a thing I had genuinely started to fear. Doyle walked the line. He crouched at the stakes. He read the numbers. And I watched his face do the thing my face had done. The mild professional interest curdling slowly into something he did not have a word for either. He told me the marks were not right. He did not mean fake. He meant not right. He said the spacing was too regular, that real survey stations follow the terrain and the property lines and the thing being surveyed, and that these did not follow anything he could see. He said the numbers made no sense because the stationing did not tie to any monument he could find. No benchmark, no section corner, no iron pin at the property boundary. He said, and I wrote this down word for word, that it was surveying that was not a survey of anything, like somebody had learned the form of it without the purpose. And then he said the sentence that I think about when I cannot sleep. He said, whoever's doing this isn't measuring your land. Your land just happens to be where the measurement is. He would not take my next call. I tried him twice more over the following weeks, and he did not pick up and did not call back, and I do not blame him, because he had come out expecting a boundary dispute and had left with something in his chest that he did not want in his house. I understood. I would have run from it too if it had been running through anyone's land but mine. Because here is the thing that a boundary dispute at least gives you, an opponent. If a neighbor is moving stakes to steal 6 feet of your yard, you have a person, you have a motive, you have a courthouse where the two of you can go and be angry at each other in front of a judge. There is a shape to it. What I had was worse than an opponent, because an opponent at least acknowledges you exist. What I had did not. The marks did not threaten me. That is what I could not make anyone understand on the phone. They did not warn me off. They did not spell anything. They did not point at me or at my windows. They were not for me at all. They were the marks you leave when you are getting ready to do something to a piece of ground. and the piece of ground does not get a say, and the piece of ground's feelings about it are not part of the calculation. I was the ground. My house was a feature to be noted, like a rock, like a tree, like a low spot that would need fill. I want to tell you about the pins, because the pins were when it stopped being outside. It was a Wednesday, 4 weeks in, or a little more, and I had gotten to the point where the first thing I did every morning, before coffee, before the bathroom, was walk the line in the yard and update the notebook. The stakes by then had crossed almost the whole lawn, and the furthest number was into the 40s, and the newest chalk line lay maybe 8 feet from my back step. I had stopped pulling them. I had learned that pulling them only caused a correction, a cleaner and faster redo, and I did not want to teach it anything else about how I would respond. So I let them stand, and I counted them, and I wrote them down. And that Wednesday, I did all of that, and then I came back inside through the back door, and I was standing at the kitchen counter measuring coffee, and I looked down, and there was a pin in my kitchen floor. It was small. A surveyor's pin, or the idea of one. A little brass-colored disc, maybe the size of a nickel, set flush into the vinyl of my kitchen floor as if it had always been there, as if the floor had been poured around it, and it was not loose. I got down on the floor and tried to pry it with my thumbnail, and then with a butter knife, and it did not move. It was set, it was part of the floor now, and stamped into the face of it was a number. I did not want to read the number. I read the number. It was in the 40s. It followed the count. The line that had been walking across my yard for a month had reached the back step, and instead of stopping at the wall of my house the way a sane process would stop at a wall, it had passed through the wall the way it had passed through the ditch and the fence and the tree line, indifferent, and had set its next station in the middle of my kitchen floor, because the kitchen floor was simply the next place the line went. I did not scream. I want that on the record too. Not out of pride, but because it is diagnostic. When you scream, some part of you believes there is something to scream at, something that can hear you and be moved. I did not scream because by then I understood, in the way your body understands before your mouth will say it, that there was nothing to scream at. You do not scream at a property line. You do not beg a survey to reconsider. The pin in my floor was not menacing me. It was noting me. It had gotten to me, the way a tide gets to a stone. It has been approaching all afternoon, and the stone's opinion of the tide has never once been solicited. After the kitchen, it was in the house to stay, and it kept the same patient pace, which is the wrong word, patient, because patience implies waiting, and this did not wait. It simply went at the speed it went, which was the speed of a thing that has all the time it needs because it was never in a hurry. Because hurry is for things that can be denied, and this could not be denied. Room by room. That was the schedule. I could almost set a calendar by it, and in fact I did. The notebook has the dates. From the kitchen, it went to the little hallway off the kitchen, and there the marks were chalk again, a blue line down the center of the hall floor, dead straight, running from the kitchen doorway toward the front of the house. Then a stake, a real wooden stake, driven somehow into my hardwood without splitting it, standing upright in my hallway like a small flag planted on a shore, spray-banded orange, numbered. Then the front room. I stopped using the front room. This is the kind of small surrender that you do not notice you are making until you have made a dozen of them. The marks appeared in the front room. First a pin by the window, then a chalk line across the carpet that no vacuuming could lift. Then 2 stakes and a spray paint arrow on the wall itself, a clean orange arrow at hip height pointing down the line toward the interior of the house, toward the bedrooms, toward me. And I found that I simply did not go in there anymore. I closed the door on it. I told myself I was containing it, the way you close a door on a room where a pipe has burst. But I knew even then that I was not containing anything, that the door meant nothing to it, that closing the door was a thing I was doing for me and not to it. It went through doors. I had watched it go through the outside wall of my own house. A hollow core interior door was not going to be the thing that finally made the universe take my preferences into account. I need to say something about the neighbors and the town, because I did try. Past the phone calls, I did try to make this real to other people. And it is important to understand how it failed, because the way it failed is part of the horror, and maybe the largest part. I brought the Hendersons over. Ron and Patty, the nearest thing I have. To friends out here, decent people, the kind who bring you a casserole when they hear about a divorce. I walked them through the yard and showed them the stakes and the numbers, and I walked them into my kitchen and showed them the pin in the floor. And they saw it. I want to be clear that they saw it. They were not blind to it. Ron got down on the floor the way Doyle had and touched the brass disc and said, "Huh, that's really in there." And Patty ran her toe along the chalk line in the hall and said it wouldn't come up. They saw all of it, and then they did the thing that I have finally come to understand is the true center of this. The thing the utility man did on the phone, and Doyle did when he stopped answering, and the county did when they said, "Feel free to remove them." They lost interest. Not out of unkindness. It was that the marks did not give them anywhere to put their alarm. There was no blood, no broken window, no threatening note, no man in the yard, nothing a person is built to be afraid of. There were only some orange marks and some numbers. And orange marks and numbers are the most boring thing in the American landscape. They are on every roadside and every construction site and every sidewalk in every town. They are the visual language of the mundane, and even standing in my kitchen looking at a pin that had been set into my floor by nothing. Some part of Ron's and Patty's minds simply filed it under roadwork and moved on, because that is what the marks are for. That is the disguise. It does not need to hide. It wears the one uniform that human beings have trained themselves for their whole lives not to look at twice. They said maybe it was the previous owners. They said maybe there was some old easement, some right-of-way, some paperwork thing, and that I should check my title. And it was such a reasonable thing to say that I did it. I spent a whole Saturday at the county records office with the plat maps and the deed, and there is no easement. There is no right-of-way. There is nothing on my land that anyone has any claim to run anything across. But I understood while I was doing it that I was not really looking for an easement. I was doing what they were doing. I was trying to find the ordinary explanation, the transposed digit, the misfiled invoice. Because if I could find it, then the world would reconcile and I could stop. The records office was clean and quiet and full of the smell of old paper, and I sat there with a plat map that showed my acre and a quarter as a plain rectangle with no lines through it, and I understood that the marks in my house did not appear on any map because they were not part of anyone's system. They were their own system. They were surveying for a plat that no county would ever file, a claim in some register I would never be shown, and my clean rectangle on the county map was, to that other register, simply an unimproved parcel that had not yet been fully noted. The word claim keeps wanting to come into this, and I keep pushing it away because claim implies a claimant, someone who wants the thing, and I do not think anything wants my house. I have thought about this more than I have thought about anything in my life, and I do not believe there is a wanting in it at all. When the county surveys a road widening, the survey crew does not want your front hedge. They do not feel anything about your hedge. Your hedge is inside the take line, and so the hedge will go. And the fact of the hedge's going is not personal. It is not even a decision. It is just what happens to be inside the line. That is what I am inside of. A take line. Something is establishing with great care and total indifference the exact dimensions of a thing, and my house is inside those dimensions, and I am inside my house. And none of that is the point of the work. The work has a point, and the point is not me. And I will never know what the point is, and that not knowing is not cruelty, because cruelty would at least require it to notice me enough to withhold. It does not withhold. It just does not include. I moved my bedroom. When the marks reached the main bedroom, first the pin, always the pin. First, set into the floor by the closet, then the chalk, then a stake standing at the foot of my bed one morning, numbered, banded, driven into the floor between the bed and the wall, in a space so narrow that no person with a hammer could have swung it. I took my mattress and I dragged it into the small back bedroom that I had been using for storage, the one furthest from the road, the last room on the line. I told myself it was the last room, that the line had to end somewhere, that a survey of a house is finite because a house is finite, and that when it reached the far wall of the far room, it would have nowhere left to go, and it would be done, and it would leave. I did the math in my notebook. I counted the rooms it had left to reach. 3, then 2. I lay on the mattress on the floor of the back bedroom at night, and I listened, though there was never anything to listen for. The marks never made a sound. They never came while I watched. They came in the spaces of the day when my attention was elsewhere, in the 11 minutes on hold, in the drive to the records office, in the 90 seconds it takes to shower, and I would come back, and there would be one more pin, one more line, one more number, closer. I want to describe a single morning in full, because the accumulation of it is the thing, and I have been giving you the shape without the weight. It was a Thursday in the 7th week. I know it was the 7th week because the notebook says so, and because the highest number on any stake by then was in the 60s. I woke on the mattress on the floor of the back bedroom with the gray light coming in, and I lay there for a while the way you do, in the last softness before the day, and then I remembered, the way I remembered every morning now, a beat late, that I lived in a house that was being measured, and the softness went out of the morning. I got up. I did not make coffee first anymore. I went to check. The pin was in the back bedroom. It was set into the floor about 2 feet from the edge of my mattress, a brass disc flush in the old pine boards, and I got down next to it in my nightshirt with my face close, and I read the number, and it followed. Of course it followed, and I sat back on my heels, and I looked at the pin, and then I looked at the walls of the small room, the last room, the room I had retreated to, and I understood that I had made a mistake in my thinking, a category error, the kind I would have caught in an instant in a spreadsheet and had missed entirely in my own life. I had thought the survey was of the house. I had thought the house was the parcel, and so I had thought that when the marks reached the last wall of the last room, they would stop, because a parcel has edges, and I was standing at the last edge. But the pin was 2 feet from my mattress, not at the wall, not at the edge of the room, 2 feet from where I slept, and I understood that the survey had never been of the house. The house was not the parcel. The house was just the part of the parcel that had walls, and walls had not stopped it before. The line was still coming, at its own speed, toward its own destination, and its destination had never been the far wall of the back bedroom. Its destination was wherever the line went, and the line went through me the way it had gone through the ditch and the fence and the brick, because I was simply the next feature. I was inside the dimensions of the thing being noted, and the noting had reached me, and my being a person rather than a low spot that would need fill was not a distinction the work recognized, because the work did not deal in that distinction. The way a tide does not deal in the difference between a stone and a shoe. I did not move out. People ask me that. The few people I have told, the ones who still take my calls, they ask why I did not just leave, get in the car, drive to a motel, drive to my sister's, drive anywhere, and I have tried to explain it, and I do not think I explain it well. But it is this. I did leave once early on, before the kitchen, when it was still only in the yard. I drove to my sister's 2 states over, and I stayed 4 days, and I slept, and I almost let myself believe it had been a stress thing, a menopause thing, a lonely woman, alone in the country thing. And I drove home, and the marks were there, and they had advanced exactly as many days' worth as I had been gone. It had not waited for me, and it had not chased me. It had simply continued at its speed in my absence, because I was never the thing it was tracking. Leaving did not slow it, and staying did not speed it. My presence was not a variable in the equation. And once you understand that your presence is not a variable, leaving loses its meaning. You cannot flee a thing that is not pursuing you. You can only be somewhere else while it does what it was always going to do. And I found, when it came down to it, that I did not want to be somewhere else. I wanted to be in my house. the one thing that had ever been only mine. For as long as it was a house and not just a parcel with a woman inside the line, the marks are past me now. That is the part I have been circling, the part that is hardest to say plainly, so I will say it plainly. The line did not stop at me. It set the pin 2 feet from my mattress that Thursday, and the next pin was on the far side of the mattress, past me, further into the house, and then it was in the little bathroom beyond. And then the marks reached the outside wall on the far side and went through it into the yard on the other side, the side that faces the tree line, and I followed them out there in the cold one morning and watched the stakes marching away from my house across the rough grass toward the ditch and the trees, numbered in the 70s now. The line continuing on toward wherever it had always been going, on the far side of me, having passed through my house and through my kitchen and through the room where I slept and through. In some sense I do not have the words for, and do not want the words for, me. Nothing happened to me. I need you to understand that, and I need you to understand why it is worse than if something had. I am not hurt. I am not sick. I did not vanish. I did not change. I am not wearing anyone else's habits or hearing anyone else's voice. The line reached me and noted me and passed on, and I am exactly as I was, sitting in my plain ranch house on County Road 9 with a notebook full of numbers and a pin in my kitchen floor that will not pry up. The thing did not want me. It did not take me. It measured the ground I happened to be standing on, established whatever it was establishing, and moved along. And I was inside the surveyed area for the duration of the survey, and now the survey has moved past my parcel to the next, and I am left the way a field is left after the crew has flagged it and gone. Marked, noted, included in something, and told nothing. Because that is the part that stays with me in the small back bedroom at night, on the mattress on the floor, with the hall light on for no reason since light means nothing to it. I am inside the marked area now. I was noted. I am on the plat of some register I will never see. A feature recorded, a station established. And the work is continuing out past my tree line, across the Henderson's land maybe, across the soybean field, station by station, toward whatever the whole thing is. A survey of? A survey so large that my house and my acre and my one life are a single unremarkable interval in it, one span between 2 numbers. And someday the survey will be finished and something will be done with the surveyed land, the way something is always done with surveyed land. It is graded, it is claimed, it is built upon, it is taken. And I do not know what. And I am inside it, and whatever is done will be done to the whole of it, all the miles of it, all the parcels the line has crossed, and my parcel will not be exempted and will not be consulted. Because the exemption of a single feature is not a thing the work can do, any more than a road can curve to spare one particular blade of grass it has been drawn straight through. I keep the notebook up. I do not know why. I have not made an entry since, because there is nothing on my land to record anymore. The marks are all still here. The pins, the chalk, the stakes, the arrow on the front room wall pointing the way it went. They do not fade. Rain does not touch them. They are the register's copy, left in place the way a survey crew leaves the stakes standing after they have recorded the coordinates, because the physical stake does not matter once the number is written down. The number is written down. I am somewhere in the 60s, between 2 other numbers, on a line that runs from a place I cannot see to a place I will never reach, and I go about my days inside my house. And the house is quiet, and nothing is coming for me, and nothing was ever coming for me, and that is not the same thing at all as being safe. I make my coffee in the morning standing at the counter, over the pin in the floor. I have stopped trying to pry it up. I look at it sometimes while the pot fills. This small brass disc with its number, set flush and permanent in the vinyl of my kitchen, and I think about how a surveyor's mark is a promise. It is a promise that a thing has been decided, and that the deciding is over, and that the only part left is the doing, later, on a schedule you are not told. The mark is the paperwork made physical. The mark says, "This has been settled." It does not argue and it does not threaten, because it does not need to. The arguing was done somewhere you were not invited, in a language you were not taught, and the mark is only here to tell the crew, when the crew finally comes, where the line runs. So I live on the line now. I water the yard, and I pay the water bill, and I bring in the mail, 2 catalogs and whatever else, and I sleep on the mattress on the floor of the last small room, and out past the tree line, the stakes go on across other people's land toward the thing I will never understand, numbered, orange, indifferent, and I lie awake sometimes, not because I am afraid of what is coming, but because I have finally understood that I have already been counted, that the frightening part is behind me, that the survey reached me and looked at me exactly as long as it looked at the ditch, wrote down a number, and went on. I was here for it. I saw the whole thing. And it did not at any point, from the first orange flag by the mailbox to the last stake vanishing into the trees, need me to be here at all. The light is on in the hall. I will leave it on. It does not matter, and I will leave it on anyway, because it is the one small thing left that is a decision, and it is mine, and no one asked me, and no one is coming to take it, and no one is coming to leave it either. Good night, I suppose. That is a strange thing to say to no one in a house that has already been measured. Good night. Rest, if you can. The work does not stop when you sleep, but then, it never noticed whether you were sleeping, and there is a kind of quiet in that, if you let there be. There is nothing to keep watch for. There is only the line, going on, past the trees, past the fields, past the small lit window where a woman lies still inside the numbers, and does not turn to look, because there is nothing out there that is looking back. Story 3. What I throw away comes back. I have always been the kind of person who throws things out. I want you to understand that about me before anything else, because it matters. Some people keep. My mother kept. She died in a house so full of saved things that the county sent 2 men in a dumpster, and I stood in the driveway signing for it, and I promised myself I would never make anyone stand in a driveway for me. So I throw things out. Bags to the curb on Tuesday, boxes to the donation bin behind the grocery store, a clean life, a light life, nothing I have to explain. That was the whole idea when I bought this house. Empty rooms. Room to breathe. The house did not agree. I noticed it first with the mug. A stupid thing to start with, I know, but that is how it started, so that is how I have to tell it. It was a cheap ceramic mug the color of a Band-Aid, chipped along the rim so it cut your lip if you weren't careful, and I hated it. It had come with a set from my marriage, and it was the last one left, and I did not want the last one left. So one morning in September, I dropped it in the kitchen trash on top of the coffee grounds, and I heard it crack against something, and I felt good. Genuinely good. One less thing. That night, it was back in the cabinet. Not a similar mug. That mug. The chip on the rim was the same chip, the shape of it like a bite. I stood there in the light of the open cabinet with my hand not quite touching it, and I told myself the obvious things. That I had not actually thrown it out, that I had meant to and forgotten. That I had taken a different mug from the same set to the trash, but I had rinsed the coffee grounds out of the trash bin that afternoon because it smelled, and there had been no broken ceramic in it. None. I remembered because I had run my hand around the bottom of the bag to check for anything sharp before I tied it, the way you do. I threw it out again. This time I walked it to the end of the driveway myself and put it in the bin under the lid, and I heard it break for real, a flat little sound, and I went to bed. In the morning, it was on the drying rack by the sink, upside down, clean, the way you leave a thing you just washed. That is when I started paying attention, not scared yet. I want to be honest about the order of it, because the order is the worst part. First I was annoyed. Then I was confused. Fear came later, and it came slow, and by the time it came, it was already too big to do anything about. I live alone. I need to say that plainly so you don't spend this whole thing waiting for the roommate, the husband, the grown kid moving things around as a joke. There is no one. I bought the house in the summer, a small 2-story on a quiet street. 3 bedrooms I did not need and got anyway, because it was priced to sell. It was priced to sell because the family that had it before me had it a long time, and old families leave a house tired, faded rectangles on the walls where pictures hung for 30 years. A worn path in the carpet from the bedroom door to the bathroom, a kitchen with drawer liners gone yellow at the edges. I gutted it as fast as I could afford to. New paint, new liners, hauled the old drapes to the curb, tore out the carpet in 2 rooms. I was erasing them, I suppose, though I didn't think of it that way then. I thought of it as making the place mine. I should tell you how I bought it, because I've turned it over a lot since. It wasn't a normal sale. There was no family standing in the kitchen wanting to know if I'd take care of the roses. The realtor handled everything through a lawyer for the estate, and she was strange about the house in a way I noticed and ignored because it was cheap and I wanted cheap. She wouldn't go upstairs with me the first walkthrough. She said she had a call to make and stood in the front hall with her coat still on while I went up alone. And when I came down, she was already halfway out the door onto the porch, breathing like she'd been holding it. She sold it fast, and she didn't ask me a single question about myself, which realtors always do, and only later did I understand that she didn't want to know. She didn't want to be able to picture me in it. I signed in her car in the driveway with the engine running. I thought she was rude. I think now she was kind, and the only way she could stand to be. There was a box in the closet under the stairs I never opened. I meant to throw it out with everything else, and I kept not getting to it. And after the mug, I was afraid to open it, and after the letter, I was afraid to touch it. It's still there. I check on it sometimes. The way you check that a stove is off. It hasn't moved. But the dust on top of it changes. Some mornings it's thick and undisturbed, and some mornings it's thin, wiped, as if a hand rested there in the night, and I have stopped opening the closet under the stairs at all. The mug was theirs, I realized later. It hadn't come from my marriage at all. I had convinced myself it had, because I needed it to have a place it came from. But when I really looked at it, it didn't match anything I'd ever owned. It matched the yellow drawer liners. It matched the worn path in the carpet. It had been in the house when I got there, in the back of a cabinet I'd meant to clear and hadn't. And when I finally threw it out, the house put it back. That's the part I couldn't say aloud for weeks. That the house wanted it. That the house had noticed it was gone. After the mug, it was the drapes. I had taken them down my first week, heavy brown things that smelled like other people's winters, and I'd stuffed them in a contractor bag and driven them to the donation bin behind the grocery store myself, and I'd shoved them through the metal mouth of the bin and heard them drop. Gone. 2 months later, I came home from work, and the light in the living room was wrong, dimmer, and it took me a full minute to understand why. The drapes were up. On the rod. Hung. The same drapes, the brown ones, the smell of them already back in the room. I hadn't kept the rod even. I'd taken the rod down too and put it in the garage. Someone had gone into my garage, found the rod, mounted it, and hung drapes I had physically pushed into a locked donation bin 4 miles away. I called a locksmith the next morning and had every lock in the house changed. I want you to know I did the reasonable things. I did all of them. I changed the locks. I put a camera on the front door, a little one that talks to my phone. I checked every window latch. I am not a woman who sits in the dark and lets things happen to her. I did everything a sensible person does, in the right order, and none of it mattered, and that is its own kind of horror. The slow discovery that the reasonable things are just noise you make to feel like you're doing something. There's a woman 2 houses down named Carol who has lived on this street since before the family that had my house had it. She waters her lawn by hand in the evenings, which is how I first met her. Standing at the property line with the hose running while I dragged my bins to the curb, I asked her about the people before me. Casually, I thought, the way you ask a neighbor. Anything. She turned the hose off. That's how I knew the answer was going to be long before she said a word. She told me the family had been there 31 years. She told me the wife's name, which I already half knew from the letter and won't write down. She told me the husband died in the house, in the front room, in his chair, in the winter, and that the wife stayed on alone for a long time after and got so she wouldn't leave it, wouldn't let anyone throw anything of his away, kept his coat on the hook by the door and his mug in the cabinet, and his chair exactly where it was on the afternoon he died in it. Carol said that last part looking straight at my front window, at the drapes, and then she said, she used to say the house wouldn't let her lose him. We all thought it was just grief talking. And then she turned the hose back on, which meant she was done, and she has not once, in all the months since, asked me how I'm settling in. Nobody on this street asks me how I'm settling in. I used to think they were cold. Now I think they're waiting to see whether I'll last long enough to be worth knowing. The camera is how I learned it doesn't come from outside. I threw away a coat, a good wool coat, camel-colored, that I donated once already years ago at my old apartment, and then, impossibly, found in the hall closet of this house. A coat that had been in a Goodwill in another town, in another year, given to strangers, gone from my life completely, hanging in my new closet as if it had followed me. I didn't understand it then. I understand it now. It was practicing on me. It was showing me it could reach back further than the mug, further than the drapes, all the way to a thing I'd let go of years before I ever saw this house. I took the coat out to the curb on a Tuesday night with the camera watching the whole front of the house, and I set it in the bin, and I went inside, and I sat at the kitchen table, and I watched the little screen on my phone. Nobody came. The porch lights stayed on. The street stayed empty. The truck came in the morning and took the bin's contents with a groan of hydraulics, and I watched that too. I watched the coat go into the truck, I saw the camel color disappear into the packer, and I felt the closest thing to peace I'd felt in a month. The coat was in the hall closet when I hung up my keys that evening. The camera never saw a soul. Not the coat leaving the closet the first time, not the coat coming back. It doesn't happen where the camera looks. That's the thing I finally understood, sitting on my kitchen floor at 1 a.m, scrubbing back and forth through footage of an empty porch. It doesn't come from outside. It was never going to come from outside. It's already in here. It's the house, or it's something wearing the house the way a hand wears a glove, and it does not walk through the front door because it does not need doors. The doors are for me. I tried distance. I have to tell you, I tried distance, because when someone reads this, the first thing they'll think is what I thought. Take the thing far enough away and it can't come back. So I tried. I took the chipped mug and I drove it 2 hours east, past the county line, past where I know anyone, and I left it on a bench at a rest stop off the interstate in daylight, walked away from it, watched it get smaller in the mirror. It was in the cabinet before I got home. I timed it once, another object, a saucer. Left home at 6,000. The saucer already on my kitchen table when I walked in at 6,052. And I hadn't been near the kitchen. And the table had been clear when I left. It doesn't travel the distance. That's what I finally understood, standing at that rest stop with my hands shaking. It isn't bringing the thing back across the miles. The miles don't exist to it. The thing simply is in the house. Again, the way it was. Because to the house the thing was never gone, I was just briefly confused about where it lived, and the confusion has been cleared up. I threw a thing off a bridge once, a little brass key that opened nothing I owned that I'd found in the letter's envelope. I threw it off the overpass into the river at night so I'd never have to see it stay. I heard it hit the water. When I got back to my car, the key was on the passenger seat. Dry, warm from the heater vent it was sitting over, and I sat in that parking lot for an hour. And I did not cry, which surprised me. and I have not tried distance again. I stopped throwing things away for a while after the coat. I want to be honest about that too. I got scared enough to stop testing it. I told myself, fine, keep the mug, keep the drapes, keep the coat. What does it cost me? And I tried to live around it. But you can't live in a house that won't let go of anything. Do you know what a house is like when nothing ever leaves it? The trash builds. I couldn't take the trash out. I mean, I could, but it came back. The bags came back, sitting neat by the back door in the morning. Not spilled, not torn, placed. And after a week of that, the smell was in the walls. So I had a choice. Live in my mother's house, the house I swore I'd never make, the full house, the kept house, or keep fighting. I kept fighting. I don't know if that was brave or stupid. I've stopped being able to tell the difference. I started keeping a list. That's the thing I do when I'm frightened. I make a list. I take inventory. I put the world in a column where I can count it. I bought a spiral notebook and I wrote down every object it brought back and the date because I thought if I could see the pattern, I could get ahead of it. Mug, September. Drapes, November. Coat. Letter. I filled 4 pages, and one morning I opened the notebook to add the saucer, and 3 of my entries were crossed out, not erased. Crossed out in my own handwriting, one clean line through each, the way you cross off a chore that's done. Mug, done. Drapes, done. Coat, done. As if the returning of them was a task on a list, and the task was complete, and someone with my exact hand had gone through in the night and marked it so. I don't cross things out like that. I have a way of doing it, a little check mark in the margin. I've done it my whole life. These were straight lines, edge to edge, and they were not mine, and they were in my writing, and I closed the notebook and I put it in the freezer, which is insane. I know it's insane, but I wanted it somewhere cold and shut, and in the morning it was back on the kitchen counter, open to the list, and there was a new line of crossing out through an entry I hadn't finished writing yet. Here is what I learned about it, in the order I learned it, because I think the order is the only thing I have left that might help someone. It does not want more. That was my first wrong idea, that it was greedy, that it was hoarding, that it was my mother's sickness in the walls. It isn't greedy, it is exact. It does not add things to the house, and it does not want things that were never here. It only ever returns what was here and then left. It is not collecting. It is correcting. Every single thing it brings back is a thing that belongs in the house by its accounting. And every time I remove one of those things, I have made an error. And it fixes my error the way you'd straighten a picture that someone bumped crooked. Without feeling. Without heat. Just, that's not right, and now it's right again. I tested the edges of it once I understood that. I bought a thing that had never been in the house, a new lamp, brass, ugly, from a store across town, and I set it on the side table, and I waited. It stayed. Nothing touched it. It only pulled old things back. New things could sit. New things were allowed for a while. That mattered later, though not the way I hoped. Then I got angry, and I did the thing I'm most ashamed of, because it's the thing that made it worse. There was a letter, from the family before me, I think, or to them. I found it behind a baseboard when I tore out the carpet. Water stained the ink run, most of it unreadable, but it had a name on it in words I didn't want in my house. Grief in it. Somebody had written it to somebody who wasn't coming back. I don't keep other people's grief. I have my own. So I tore it up, not into pieces, into confetti, into nothing, thumbnail-sized scraps I could barely feel between my fingers, and I flushed half of them and burned the other half in the sink with a lighter and ran the tap over the ash, and I felt like I'd won something. The letter was on my pillow the next morning. Whole. Not taped. Not reassembled. Whole. The way it was before I found it behind the baseboard, before the water got to it. The ink dark and even and readable now. Every word. And I read every word before I could stop myself. And I wish I hadn't. I'm not going to write here what it said. That's the one thing I'll keep for myself. But it told me who they were. And it told me what the house was doing. The house is putting itself back. That's all. That's the whole of it, and it's so much worse than a ghost. Something in this house is restoring it to the way it was before I came and started throwing pieces of it away. Not haunting me. Not hungry for me. Restoring. Room by room, object by object, undoing every change I made, with the patience of water finding level. The drapes came back because the drapes belong on that rod. The mug came back because the mug belongs in that cabinet. The letter came back because the letter belongs behind that baseboard, whole, the way it was on the day it was written. And it is putting the day back too, do you understand? Not just the objects, but the arrangement, the state, the way the house was on some particular evening years before I ever signed the papers. And it is nearly finished. I know it's nearly finished because of what started happening to my things. The lamp went first. The brass lamp, the new one, the ugly one, the one it had allowed. I came home and it was gone. Not moved, no box. It came in. No receipt in the drawer. No ring of clean on the dusty table where it had stood. The dust was even, undisturbed, as if the lamp had never touched that table, as if I had never bought it, as if the memory of it had been lifted out of the house along with the object. I stood there and I said out loud, to no one, "I bought that today." And my own voice sounded like a liar's. Because there was no proof. The store would have a record, maybe. My card would have a charge, but in the house there was nothing. And the house is very persuasive about what is real. Then the new paint. I'd painted the living room a pale gray my first month, over the family's cream, and one morning there was a patch by the window the size of a dinner plate where the cream was showing through. Not peeling, not water damage. I know what those look like. My father did drywall, the gray simply thinner there, retreating, the cream coming up underneath it like something surfacing in water. By the next week, the patch was the size of the window frame. The house is repainting itself the color it used to be from underneath. And there's nothing I can do to a wall that stops a color from coming back through it that was there first. My couch is going. I noticed last night. My couch, gray like the paint, new like the paint, and there's a give in one cushion now that wasn't there. A sag, a shape worn into it. And it is not a shape I made, because I don't sit on that end. It's a shape someone else made, over years. The someone whose couch was here before mine, and my couch is learning to be their couch, is being corrected into their couch, and when it's finished being corrected, I don't think my couch will be here at all. I think their couch will be here, the couch that belongs. And it isn't only my things going. Their things are arriving, things that were never mine to throw away, things I never touched. Coming back into a house they must have left it in when the estate was cleared. That's the part that took the ground out from under me, because up to then I could almost tell myself it was about me, my choices, my errors being undone. It isn't about me. There's a watch on the nightstand now, a man's watch, gold, stopped, and I did not put it there, and I have never owned it, and it is his. It has to be his. The husband who died in the front room in his chair in the winter. There's a second toothbrush in the holder in the bathroom. Dry, worn flat, and I threw the holder out my first week and bought a new one. And now the old one is back with 2 brushes in it, and only one of them is mine. There are reading glasses on the arm of the chair by the window. The chair, the one Carol talked about, which I do not own, which I have never owned, which was gone when I moved in and is not gone now. It is by the window where it was on the afternoon he died in it, and there are glasses folded on the arm as if he set them down a minute ago to rest his eyes. There's a door frame in the upstairs hall I painted over my first month. Cream, 3 coats. I did it myself. Yesterday there were marks on it coming up through the paint, and I know what they are because my own mother made them on a door frame when I was small. Pencil lines and dates and a name and a height. A child's growth marked year over year. Climbing the frame, a child who lived here, and grew up here, and is grown and gone now, and was never any business of mine. The paint is thinning over the marks, the way it thinned over the color. The house is bringing the child's height back to the doorframe, not the child. I want to be clear. It isn't the child, it's the record of the child, the mark. The child left, the thing the child left behind in the house when the family cleared out and moved on to wherever families move on to. The house is calling all of it home. Every trace, every left behind ordinary thing. And there is a horror in a house that misses a family this exactly, that can rebuild the evidence of 31 years of an ordinary life, down to the folded glasses and the flattened brush, and I am standing in the middle of it in my new clothes with my new phone, like a set piece from the wrong production, and the house is quietly striking me from the scene. That's the pattern. Whatever I brought in, it thins, it fades, it forgets itself, and whatever was here comes back through it, solid and sure and exactly placed. And the house grows more and more into the photograph of a day I never saw. A day that belongs to people I never met, and every morning there's more of them and less of me. I am the thing that doesn't belong. I want to be very clear-eyed about this, because I've had a lot of nights to think about it, sitting in a living room that's turning cream around me. It isn't cruel. I keep waiting for it to be cruel, and it never is. It has never once come at me. It has never touched me or spoken to me or stood at the foot of the bed. It is not interested in me at all, and I think that's what finally frightened me in the real way, in the way that doesn't let you sleep. The total absence of interest. A thing that hates you is at least a thing that knows you're there. This doesn't hate me. To this, I am not an enemy. I am a discrepancy. I am the mug on the wrong shelf, the crooked picture, the coat in a bin. I am the one wrong thing left in a room that is otherwise almost perfectly restored, and it fixes wrong things. That is the only thing it does. It fixes them without heat and without hurry, and without ever once wondering whether the wrong thing might prefer to stay. I moved the mug to the trash again last week. I don't know why. Habit, maybe, or spite, or a test to see if any of the old rules still held. It was back before I finished tying the bag, not in the morning, not that night, before I finished tying the bag. I turned around and it was in the cabinet, and the cabinet door was open the way I'd left it, and I hadn't heard a sound. It's faster now. It used to take a night. Now it doesn't even take the length of a chore. I think that's because it's almost done, and the last corrections are the easy ones, the small stubborn ones, and I'm running out of room to be a discrepancy in. Let me tell you about the photographs, because that's the newest thing, and I think it's the thing that means I don't have much time. There were nail holes in the walls when I moved in, and faded rectangles, 30 years of somebody's pictures. I filled the holes with spackle, and I painted over them, and I hung my own things, a mirror, a print of the ocean I liked, a calendar. 3 days ago, the ocean print was gone, and there was a nail hole where it had been, an old one, spackle gone, painted around, and above the hole a faded rectangle, the ghost of a frame that hung there for years and was never mine. Yesterday there were 4 of them, 4 faded rectangles, 4 old nail holes, my mirror down and gone, and a bare hook in its place shaped for a different frame. This morning the whole wall was theirs, rectangles and holes and one crooked picture hook, and my ocean, my mirror, my calendar simply not part of the world anymore. And I stood in front of that wall and I could not remember exactly what my calendar had looked like. That's the thing. I'm starting to not remember. The house is very persuasive about what is real, and I live inside it, and I breathe its air, and it is quietly editing me the way it edited the lamp. I found a photograph on the mantel this evening that I have never seen before. It's them. It has to be them. A man and a woman in the gray light of some long ago afternoon, standing in this living room in front of these drapes, the brown ones, on that couch, the sagging one, the one my couch is turning into, and the room in the photograph is the room I'm sitting in right now. Exactly. The drapes, the couch, the cream walls, the mug. I can see the mug on the side table, the chip catching the light. It's the finished picture. It's the day the house is putting itself back to. Everything in that photograph is now in this room, restored, exact, in its place. Everything except me. I've been holding the photograph for a long time now, longer than I meant to, and I keep looking at the two of them in it, in their finished room, and I keep looking at the space between them on that couch, the sagging cushion, the shape worn into it that isn't mine. And I have this thought I can't put down, that I can't stop having, that the room is almost ready, that there's only one wrong thing left in it, that the house has undone the mug and the drapes and the coat and the letter and the paint and the pictures and the lamp, has undone every change I ever made, patiently, exactly, without ever once raising its voice. And that when it's done, when the very last discrepancy is corrected and the room matches the photograph completely, there won't be a stranger sitting on the wrong end of a couch that was never hers. There'll just be the room, the way it was, the way it belongs. I did try to leave. I need that on the record, in case leaving is the thing you're deciding right now, listening to me. I packed a bag one night when the pain had gone and the watch had come. One bag, the way you do when you're finally scared enough to be simple about it. Just clothes and my charger and the notebook I couldn't stand to leave behind. I put it in the car. I backed down the driveway, and at the end of the street, under the light where I could see, I looked in the bag in the passenger seat and my clothes were gone from it and it was full of someone else's things instead. A woman's cardigan, soft, worn thin at the elbows, that smelled like a perfume I've never worn, a hairbrush with gray in it. Folded slips of paper in a hand that wasn't mine. My bag, that I had packed with my own two hands 20 minutes before, packed now with her, with the wife, with the woman who wouldn't leave and got so she couldn't. I sat at the end of the street a long time, and here is the thing I can't explain, the thing that keeps me up. I wasn't only afraid. Part of me was ashamed, the way you're ashamed when you've tried to sneak out of somewhere you promised to stay. Like I was abandoning something, like the bag was reminding me, gently, that I'd forgotten who I was supposed to be. I drove back. I unpacked the cardigan into the closet where it belonged. I don't fully remember deciding to. I'm going to keep the light on tonight. I've read that somewhere, that you keep the light on. I don't think it will matter. The light was on in the photograph too. I keep the mug now. I put it back myself, in the morning, before it can. It's the only thing I've found that I can do. To belong a little, to match, to stop being quite so wrong. I straightened the drapes yesterday. I sat on the worn end of the couch tonight, the shape that isn't mine, and I let myself fit into it, and it fit better than my own end ever did, and that scared me more than anything. How easy it was. How much like coming home. If you buy a house from a family that had it a long time, and it's cheap, and you don't understand why it's cheap, pay attention to what you throw away. Pay attention to whether it stays gone. And if you notice, some quiet evening, that the walls are the wrong color underneath, that a color you didn't choose is coming up through the one you did, that the trash won't leave and the drapes came back, and there's a mug in the cabinet you're sure you broke, don't do what I did. Don't fight it room by room. Don't wait until you're the only thing left that doesn't match. Just go. Leave the house the way it wants to be. Let it have its picture. Because it isn't angry, and it isn't hungry, and it will never chase you. It will just keep putting things back, one at a time, without ever tiring, without ever losing count, until the room is exactly the way it was on the best afternoon it remembers. And you should not be there when it decides you were the last thing out of place. I can hear the house settling. That's all it is, I keep telling myself. Old houses settle. That's the wood cooling, the joints easing, the ordinary sounds of a place at rest. But it doesn't sound like settling anymore. It sounds like a room breathing out, like something that has been holding itself tense for a long time, holding a shape that didn't fit, finally letting go, easing back into the shape it always meant to be. And every time I hear it, I look around, and there's a little less of me in the room, and a little more of them. and the photograph on the mantle is warm now. Warm to the touch, the way a thing is warm when it's been held. I'm still here. I want to say that, in case it helps, in case anyone reads this and needs to know it can go this far and you can still be here. I'm still here. I'm on the couch that used to be mine, in the room that used to be mine, and the mug is where it belongs, and the drapes are drawn, and the light is on, and I fit the worn cushion better every night. I'm still the wrong thing. I can feel it. I'm the last wrong thing in the right room, and the house is very close to done, and it hasn't touched me, and it isn't going to touch me. It's just going to keep going until I match. And I'm so tired. That's the part I didn't expect. How tired it makes you, being the one thing that doesn't belong, holding your own shape in a room that wants a different one. It would be so easy to stop, to let the cushion have me, to be the woman in the photograph, in her finished room, in her place. I catch myself thinking it, and I don't even flinch anymore. That's how I know it's close. If you're listening to this from your own house tonight, do me one small thing. Take something out to the trash. Anything. A jar, a paper, whatever's nearest. Take it out and set it in the bin and go to sleep. And in the morning, before anything else, before the coffee, go and look. Look at whether it's still gone. Because that's the only question that ever mattered in the end. Not whether the house is haunted, not whether you're alone, just that one small thing, the smallest thing, the thing I stopped being able to answer somewhere back in the fall. When you throw something away, does it stay away? Mine doesn't. Mine hasn't for a long time. And the room is almost finished now, and it's warm, and it's quiet, and everything is in its place. Everything but me. Story 4, the room tone. I want to explain this the way I would explain it to a client, because that is the only way I know how to keep my hands from shaking while I do it. Clean. In order. Cause and effect. If I do it that way, maybe it will sound like a problem with a solution, and not like the thing it actually is. My name doesn't matter, but my work does, so I'll start there. I edit audio for a living. Podcasts, mostly. 2 true crime shows, a gardening, one that pays better than you'd think, a handful of corporate training modules, the occasional audiobook when the year is thin. I do it all from the second bedroom of a small house at the end of a street in a town you've driven past without stopping. The room has foam on 2 walls, a heavy curtain on the window, a desk, a chair that cost more than my first car, and a good pair of headphones that seal out the world. It is the quietest room in the house, which is the whole point of it. The thing you learn, doing this, is that silence is not silence. There is no such thing as an empty track. Every room has a sound, even when nothing in it is making a sound. The furnace 2 rooms over. The refrigerator cycling. The blood in your own ears. The building settling a fraction of a degree as the sun goes down. We call it room tone, ambient. The floor under everything, and you need it. When you cut a sentence out of an interview, you leave a hole, and a hole is louder than any word because the ear notices the sudden death of the background. So you fill the hole with room tone. You record 30 seconds of the room doing nothing, and you lay it under the edit like a coat of primer, and the ear relaxes, and the listener never knows a cut happened. That is the craft. You make the seams disappear by feeding the ear. The sound of nothing. So recording nothing is routine for me. It is the least dramatic thing I do. At the end of a session, I put the recorder in the middle of whatever room I'm working in, tell everyone to hold still, and I capture a minute of the space breathing. Client rooms, hotel rooms, my own room. I have hundreds of these files. Room tone, take 1. Room tone, my office, dry. Room tone, kitchen, fridge running. They are boring the way a ruler is boring, and just as useful. I'm telling you all of this so you understand that when it started, I did not think it was anything. I thought it was a problem with a solution. It was a Tuesday in the middle of a long project, an 8-episode series about a fraud case, and I had cut so many ums and false starts out of the lead interview that I'd burned through my whole library of matching room tone. The primary interview had been recorded in my office, so I needed my office's tone clean, and I needed a fresh long take of it because the old ones had a hum in them from a lamp I'd since replaced. Simple. It was almost 11 at night. My husband Dan was asleep down the hall. The house was as quiet as it ever got. I set the recorder on the desk. On its little tripod, capsule pointed at the room. I set levels. I sat back in my chair, put my hands in my lap, and did the thing I always do, which is nothing. You have to be still for room tone. You can't shift your weight. You can't let the chair creak. You can't breathe hard. You become furniture. I counted my own slow breaths and watched the meter float along the floor of the scale, a soft green line. The sound of a room with a person in it trying to be a room without one. 90 seconds. I stopped it. I named the file. I dragged it into the session and laid it under a cut, and the scene vanished, and I moved on. I didn't listen to it closely. That's the part I keep coming back to. You don't listen closely to room tone. You listen for problems. A car passing, a dog, a click in the electronics, and if there are none, you use it. There were none. I used it. I worked another hour and went to bed. The next afternoon I was doing a fine pass on that same section, and I had the take soloed and turned up loud in my headphones, way up, because I was chasing a tiny digital tick I thought I'd introduce somewhere. Loud room tone is a strange thing to sit inside. It's a wash, a soft gray sea. Your brain starts inventing shapes in it, the way your eyes invent shapes in the dark. I know that. I have known that for 15 years. So the first time I heard the breathing under my own breathing, I did what any professional would do. I dismissed it. Pareidolia. The ear making a face out of noise. But I'm careful, and being careful is a habit that outlasts your reasons for it. So I looped the section. 10 seconds, over and over, in the dark of the closed headphones. And there it was, under my breath. My breath was there, slow, 4 count, exactly the way I'd been sitting. There was another breath, slower, longer on the intake. It did not line up with mine. When I breathed in, it was breathing out. It was patient in a way. Breath is not patient when a person is only sitting still. It sounded like someone lying down. I took the headphones off. The office was the office. Foam, curtain, desk, chair, me. Nothing else in it, nothing that breathes. I put the headphones back on and looped it again, and it was still there. And now that I'd heard it, I couldn't unhear it, the way you can't unsee a word once you know how it's spelled. Here is what I did, because I want you to know I didn't just accept it. I built a case against it. I told myself it was Dan, that he'd walked past the door, that the house had carried his breath down the hall. But Dan had been at work when I recorded it. The timestamp was 10:05 p.m., and he'd been asleep since 10. I told myself it was the furnace, some low pulse in the ductwork that resembled breath. So I pulled up an old office tone from January with the same furnace running and looped it just as loud, and there was no breath in it, just the honest hum of a working house. But the tone was a standalone file, recorded on the field recorder, not the interface. There was no other track for it to bleed from. The recorder had been alone in the room with me. It had recorded me, and it had recorded something breathing beside me, and I had not heard that thing with my own ears. That's the piece I could not get around, and it's the piece I need you to hold on to. Because everything after depends on it. I did not hear it live. In the room, in the moment, sitting 3 feet from the recorder, my own 2 ears registered nothing but the ordinary hush of a quiet room. The breath was only on the recording. It existed in the captured silence and nowhere else. The microphone had heard something the room would not let me hear. I did the responsible thing. I decided the recorder was faulty. There's a whole category of digital artifacts that can masquerade as sound: a failing capsule, a grounding issue, a bad preamp that folds a whisper of interference into something the brain reads as organic. It was an old recorder. I ordered a new one, a good one, overnight, and I told myself the problem had a name, and the name was hardware. The new recorder came. That night, same setup, same chair, same 11 o'clock. New machine, factory clean. Different manufacturer entirely, so it couldn't share a flaw. I recorded 3 minutes this time, not 90 seconds, because I wanted length to be sure. I sat like furniture, had breathed my 4 count. I told myself I would listen to it in the morning with fresh ears, but I didn't make it to morning. I couldn't. I put the headphones on the second the recording stopped, and I turned it up, and I listened to the whole 3 minutes with my eyes closed. The breath was there, on the new machine, same slow intake, same lying down patience out of phase with mine. And there was more of it now, because I'd given it more room. Around the 2-minute mark it changed. It didn't get louder, it got closer. The way a voice on the phone gets closer when the person shifts the receiver to their mouth. The same volume, but suddenly intimate. The little wet sounds of a real mouth in a real space. It was near the microphone, which meant it had been near me. I had been sitting there being furniture, and something had been lying down close enough to the recorder that I could hear the corner of its lid come unstuck, and I had felt nothing, heard nothing, known nothing. I want to be honest about the state I was in, because I think the state matters. I was not frightened yet. I was fascinated the way you're fascinated by a wound before it starts to hurt. I was a technician with an anomaly, and the anomaly was reproducible. And reproducibility is the thing my whole profession is built to love. I made a folder. I called it Ton. I started recording the office every night, deliberately now, 3 minutes at 11, and logging what I heard the next day like a lab notebook. I even set up a second microphone, a different type, a condenser on a stand in the corner, running to the interface, so I'd have 2 independent captures of the same moment, 2 ears in the room instead of 1. Both ears heard it. The field recorder and the condenser, different technologies, different positions, both printed the breath. And when I lined the 2 files up on the timeline, mono-summed and phase-checked the way you do to cancel anything that's identical in both, the breath did not cancel. It moved. It was in a slightly different place in each microphone, the way a real source in a real room is in a different place relative to 2 different mics. Triangulation. I could have told you where in the room it was lying. I did not want to know where in the room it was lying, so I stopped doing that particular test. I ran a test I'm not proud of on the 6th night, because I wanted to know whether the thing was tied to my office or tied to me. I took the recorder into the living room, a bright ordinary room with a television and a couch, and none of the foam-walled hush of the office. And I recorded 3 minutes of it at 11. Different room, different acoustics entirely. You can hear the size of a room in its tone, the way the reflections come back off hard surfaces, and the living room is bigger and brighter and reads that way on tape. And the breath was in the living room too. Same slow intake, same lying down patience. Not in the office. With me. Wherever I set the recorder down and became still, it lay down nearby and breathed. I moved to the kitchen the next night to be sure, and it was in the kitchen. I understood then that I had been thinking about it wrong, that it was not haunting a room, it was answering a recording, anywhere, the way a struck bell answers the hammer. The room didn't matter. The captured silence mattered. I could have driven to a motel 2 states over and set the recorder on the nightstand, and it would have lain down on the carpet beside me and breathed. There was a visual to it too, and the visual was worse than the sound. Because you can tell yourself the ear invents things, but a waveform is just math. I opened one of the takes in a spectrogram, a picture of the sound, frequency up the side, time across the bottom, loudness and brightness. The tool I use to hunt down clicks and hums. I can see faster than I can hear. My own breath showed up the way breath does. Soft broadband smears low in the picture, in time with how I'd been breathing, and threaded through them, out of phase, were the others. The same soft smears, unmistakably breath-shaped, unmistakably not mine, at intervals no metronome in my body was keeping. I could count them in the picture. I could point at them. On the ninth night's take, there was a third smear I hadn't consciously heard yet. So faint it was almost the noise floor, and I saw it before I heard it. And I sat there with the cursor hovering over a breath and a picture of a room where I had been the only lung. And I thought, with the flat, clean part of my mind, there it is, right there. I can prove it. And then I thought, prove it to whom? And closed the laptop. By the end of that first week, the second breath had a companion. This is the part where the notebook stops sounding like a notebook. On the ninth night, in the last minute of the take, under my breath, and under the slow lying down breath, there was a third. Slower still, so slow, it was almost not breathing at all. So slow that at first I logged it as the furnace and then went cold, because I knew the furnace, and this was not the furnace. Two of them now, both patient, both out of phase with me and with each other, so that the three breaths moved through each other like tide lines, and the room, my clean, dry office where I had sat alone every night of my adult professional life, sounded on the recording like a room where three people were sleeping, and only one of them was me. I told Dan. Of course I told Dan. I'm not a fool. I know what isolation does. I made him sit in the office with me one night while I recorded, and I made him breathe normally, and afterward we listened together, both of us with an ear cup pressed to the same headphone, heads together over the desk like teenagers sharing a song, and Dan heard the two of us breathing, close and clear, and then he heard the third breath, the slow one, the lying down one. And he took his head away from the headphone and looked at me, and he did not say pareidolia, he did not say hardware, he said, in a small flat voice I had never heard him use, play it again. So it wasn't me. Whatever else I want to doubt, I can't doubt that. Dan heard it with his own head next to mine, and Dan does not have my ears, or my imagination, or my week of not sleeping. He heard it. And then he wanted the lights on, and then he wanted to sleep with the hall light on, and he has slept with the hall light on ever since. We reacted the way people react, which is to say we tried to make it stop by treating it like a haunting, because that at least is a story with rules. We had the house blessed. A young pastor with kind hands walked room to room, and I recorded him doing it, which he found strange but permitted. And that night I recorded the tone, and the breath was still there, unbothered, indifferent to the blessing. And I understood then that this was not a thing that cared about blessings. We salt-lined the office door because Dan's mother said to, and neither of us had a better idea, and salt is cheap. The breath did not notice the salt. It was not a folklore thing. It did not obey folklore. It obeyed something else, and the something else was the recording. That was its medium. That was where it lived, not in the room. In the captured silence of the room, I need to explain what I mean by that because it took me too long to understand it, and I don't want it to take you as long. The thing was not in my office. If it had been in my office, I would have heard it, or Dan would have felt it, or the cat next door would have refused to come near the window, or something. The room, moment to moment, was empty and ordinary. You could stand in it at 11 o'clock and there was nothing. The thing only existed in the record of the room, in the file, in the frozen minute of nothing that I had captured and could play back. Live, the room was clean. Recorded, the room was full. The microphone was not picking up a sound that was too quiet to hear. It was picking up a presence that had no sound at all until it was played back, that used the playback itself as the space it stood in. When I hit play, I wasn't listening to what had been in the room. I was opening a door into a version of the room where it was. And every time I opened that door, it was a little further inside. I can prove the last part, and the proof is the reason I finally understood. I was not documenting a phenomenon. I was feeding one. I have all the files, time-stamped, in order. On night 1, the breath was distant and singular and out of phase, a presence somewhere in the room, lying down, aware of nothing. By the end of the first week, it was 2 and closer. By the end of the second week, I stopped recording for 4 days. I made myself stop. I told myself I was being obsessive, which was true, and that stopping would prove I could. And when I recorded again on the 5th day, the breath was not 2 weeks of progress further along. It was exactly where it had been. It had waited. It did not advance while I wasn't listening. It only advanced when I opened the door. The recordings were not observations of a thing that was happening on its own schedule. They were the schedule. Each playback was a step. I was not a witness. I was the mechanism. Once I understood that, the correct action was obvious. Stop recording. Stop playing back. Close the door and never open it again, and let the thing stay frozen at whatever distance it had reached, lying down somewhere in a version of my office that only existed when I pressed a button. And I want you to know that I tried to do the correct thing. And I want you to understand why I failed. Because the why is the worst part. And it's the part that I think you might recognize in yourself, if you're honest. I couldn't stop listening because I had to know. That's all. That's the whole engine of it. Not compulsion in the supernatural sense. The thing did not compel me, did not whisper to me, did not want anything I could detect. It was indifferent. It never reacted to me, never turned toward the microphone, never acknowledged that the room it was lying down in was a room I also occupied. It had the terrible flat patience of a process, not a person. And that indifference was exactly what I couldn't leave alone, a thing that wanted me. I could have fought, a thing that was coming for me. I could have fled, but a thing that simply was, that advanced one measured step per playback, with no more malice than a clock has, that did not care whether I listened or not, except that it could not move unless I did, that I had to understand. I could not close the door on a sound I did not understand, so I kept opening it, knowing. The voices started in the 3rd week, not the breath becoming a voice. The breath was still there, 3 of them now, close, a room of sleepers. But on the 18th night, in the middle of the take, over the breathing, there was a voice, quiet, low, neither male nor female in a way I could pin, without weight or breath behind it, and it did not say anything dramatic. It said the time. It said 11:04, soft, the way you'd murmur it to yourself, checking a clock in the dark, and the timestamp on the file said 11:04 p.m. It said the true time. The time in the room, at the moment it was speaking, in a room where I sat alone and heard nothing but my own pulse. I need to be very clear about the sequence, because the sequence is the horror, and I've turned it over so many times, I've worn it smooth. Live, in the room. At 11,004, I heard nothing. Silence. My own breath, the furnace, the floor of the world. Nothing, said the time. No voice moved the air near me. If a voice had spoken in that room, I would have leapt out of the chair, because I was strung like a wire. I was listening for exactly that. There was nothing, and then 12 hours later, I played back the frozen minute, and the frozen minute contained a voice that had stood in that room and stated, correctly, the hour. At a moment when I could swear on anything you like that the room had been empty of any voice but the one in my own head, which had also, at 11,004, been thinking about the time, because I had been watching the clock and waiting to stop the recording. It knew the time because I knew the time. That was my next thought, and I hated it. It wasn't reading a clock. There was no clock in its version of the room. It was reading the room, and the room, at that moment, contained my knowing. The recording didn't just capture the air of the space. It captured the contents of the space, all of them, including the ones with no sound, including, apparently, the quiet interior fact of a woman sitting in a chair thinking 11:04. And the thing that lived in the playback had reached the point in its slow advance where it could pick that up off the floor of me and set it down in a voice. The gap was closing. That's the phrase I started writing in the notebook, over and over, until it stopped being words. The gap between the recording and the room. At the start, the recorded room and the live room had been two different places, one empty, one full. And the door between them opened only when I pressed play, only for the length of the file, only in my headphones. But every playback moved the recorded room a step closer to the live one. The distant breath became a near breath. The near breath became breath with a body shape I could triangulate. The bodies became a voice. The voice knew what I knew. In the moment I knew it, though I only heard it in the morning. The delay between the room being empty and the room being full was shrinking. The thing was catching up to the present. It was learning to be in the room at the same time I was, instead of only in the room's echo. And I understood, with the cold, clean part of my mind that never stops working no matter what the rest of me is doing, exactly what it would mean when the gap closed all the way. It would mean the recording, and the room became the same room. It would mean the thing that lay down in the captured silence was no longer waiting in the playback for me to open the door. It would mean I heard it live, and by then it would already be near, because I had spent 3 weeks pressing play, walking it step by step across the distance, out of the frozen minute and into the real one with my own thumb. Because I had to know. I stopped. This time, I actually stopped. I understood the shape of the thing at last, and I unplugged both microphones and I'd put the field recorder in a drawer in the kitchen, across the house from the office. And I did not record, and I did not play back, and I did not, for 6 days, open any door into any version of any room. I slept badly, and I did not edit. I told my clients I was sick, which was true, and I sat in my quiet, ordinary, empty office in the daylight, and it was just a room, foam, and curtain, and desk, and the good chair, and I let myself believe the thing was frozen wherever I left it, one step short, lying down forever in a minute I would never play again. I want to tell you that held. I want to give you an ending where stopping was enough, where the correct action, taken late but taken, closed the door and kept it closed. That is the ending I would write if I were making this up, because it's the ending a person deserves for finally being smart. That is not what happened. On the 6th night of not recording, I woke at 3 a.m. The way you do, no reason, just awake. The hall light gold under the bedroom door because Dan still keeps it on. Dan was asleep beside me. The house was doing nothing, saying nothing, the honest hush of a real house at the dead hour. And I lay there, and I was not thinking about the thing. For once, I was thinking about a client's episode I'd have to face in the morning, cutting the number of times a man said, "you know," out of a 40-minute confession. Ordinary thoughts. The thoughts of a woman getting her life back. And then I heard it. Live. In the room. Not in headphones. I had no headphones on. I was lying in my own bed with my own ears in the dark. Under Dan's breathing and my own, there was a third breath. Slow. Long on the intake. Out of phase with both of us. Lying down. In the bedroom. In the real room. In the real 3 a.m. In the present tense, with nothing between it and me. No microphone, no file, no thumb on a button. The gap had closed. Not in the office. It had followed the last recording I made out of the office and into the drawer, and out of the drawer, and it did not need the drawer anymore. It did not need me to press play. It had learned the room. It was in the room. It was 3 feet away, on the floor beside the bed, on the side where no one sleeps, breathing the slow, patient breath of a thing that has all the distance in the world behind it, and none left in front of it. And I lay still, so still, furniture again, and I did not turn my head to look at the floor beside the bed, and I have not turned my head to look at the floor beside the bed on any night since. That was 4 months ago. I don't record anymore. I do all my editing with library tone now, generic room tone I bought from a service, the sound of somebody else's empty room, and it doesn't match perfectly, and my work has gotten worse, and I don't care. I threw out both microphones. I threw out the field recorder, took it to the dump myself, watched it go under. I deleted the tune folder, every file, emptied the trash, ran a wipe on the drive. I did everything you would do, and the breath is still in the bedroom at 3 a.m. Every night, slow and out of phase, and some nights now there are two. And I lie still, and I don't look, and I wait for it to be morning. Because the thing about the dead hour is that it always, eventually, becomes morning, and the breathing always, eventually, stops, or at least becomes quiet enough that the ordinary house comes back up around it like water closing over a stone. I could live with that. I want you to understand that I had almost made my peace with living with that, with a house that has a fourth occupant on the floor at night, indifferent, patient in the way a process is patient, wanting nothing, doing nothing, simply present in the room. It took me 3 weeks to teach it. People live with worse. People live with pain and grief and the slow, certain approach of things much larger than a breath. I told myself I would learn to be furniture forever, and that would be the price, and I would pay it, and that would be the end of the story. But there is one more file. I lied a little when I said I deleted everything. I deleted the tune folder. I wiped the drive. But there was one file that was never in the tune folder because I never put it there because I didn't record it. It appeared. It's on the drawer recorder. No, I threw that out. It's on my phone. In my voice memos, between a grocery list I dictated on a Thursday and a snippet of a melody I hummed for a jingle client, there's a voice memo I did not make. It is 90 seconds long. It is dated the night the breathing moved into the bedroom, time-stamped 3011 a.m. A time when my phone was face down and charging on the nightstand, and I was lying rigid in the dark, not touching it. 90 seconds. The length of a room tone take. I have listened to it exactly once. It is my office. I know the sound of my office the way you know the sound of your own name. I have the whole gray sea of its silence memorized, foam and curtain, and the particular way that room holds a breath. It is my office at night, empty, the furnace off, the deep floor of nothing, and 30 seconds in, over that nothing, there is a voice, quiet, low, without breath behind it. And it is not the flat neither voice that used to state the time. It is mine. It is my own voice, unmistakably, the voice I hear on every track I've ever cut. And it says, soft, the way you'd say it to someone in the dark who was already half asleep. Good night. Just that. Good night. In my own voice, at 3:10 in the morning, in a recording of my office. A room I had not set foot in for 6 days. A room across the house from where I lay. A room that was dark and empty and cold and had no recorder in it and no me in it and no reason on this earth to be saying goodnight to anyone in my voice at 3 in the morning. I will never play it again. I've thought about deleting it 100 times. My thumb goes to it and stops every time, and I put the phone down because as long as it's there and I don't play it, the door is closed and whatever is on the other side of it stays 90 seconds long and stays in my office and stays saying goodnight to an empty room. And I'm afraid this is the last true thing I have, so I'll give it to you plainly. I'm afraid that the reason I can't delete it is the same reason I couldn't stop recording. I have to know it's still there. I keep it the way you keep the light on in the hall, proof that the room I left is still the room I left. That the voice in it is still on the other side of a button I have not pressed. So that's where it is. That's where I am. I don't record. I don't play back. I lie still at 3 a.m. and I don't look at the floor. And somewhere on a phone I will never throw away, there is a minute and a half of my own empty office. And in it a woman with my exact voice tells the dark goodnight, kindly, patiently, from a room I walked out of hours ago and swore I would never enter again. I don't know how to end this, and I think that's fitting, because it hasn't ended. I keep expecting a night when the breath on the floor becomes a voice, and the voice is mine, and it says goodnight to me in my own bed, the way it says it to the empty office, and the gap between the room I record and the room I live in closes down to nothing at all, and there is only one room, and I am in it with the thing I taught to be in it too. Maybe that night is coming. Maybe it's already the room I'm in and I only haven't heard it yet, the way I never heard any of it live until the day it was already lying on the floor. If you do this kind of work, if you know what room tone is, if you've ever sat in your own quiet space and recorded a minute of nothing to lay under a cut, I'll tell you the only thing I know now that I didn't know before. The silence in your room is not empty. It has never been empty. It is only patient, and it is only quiet, and it is only waiting for someone with the right equipment and the wrong amount of curiosity to press record and then to press play. And then, God help them, to need to know. Don't record the empty room. Let the nothing stay. Nothing. Fill your cuts with someone else's silence, a stranger's, bought and generic and safe. Leave your own rooms quiet alone. And if you've already recorded it, if you have a folder of the sound of your empty house the way I did, the way maybe you do right now without ever having thought twice about it, then do the one thing I couldn't. Don't listen. Don't loop it. Don't turn it up. Don't chase the shape you think you hear in the gray. There's a shape in there. There's always a shape in there. It's lying down, and it's far away, and it's out of phase with you, and it will stay exactly that far away forever, as long as you never open the door and take that first step across the distance for it. The moment you hear it, it's already begun to close the gap. And by the time you hear it in the room instead of the recording, it will be near, and it will have your voice, and it will already know how to say goodnight. Rest now, if you can. Leave the recorder in the drawer. Leave the last take unplayed. And whatever you do, on the night you wake at the dead hour and the house has a breath too many in it, don't answer. Don't say it back. Lie still. Be furniture. Wait for the morning. The morning always comes. The breathing always, eventually, goes quiet. It's only the silence you have to be afraid of. And the silence, I promise you, is very, very patient. Story 5. The stairs you don't remember climbing. You are sitting on the couch with the television off and the lamp on low, and the last clear thing is this. Your feet are on the floor, both of them, flat, and your hands are wrapped around a mug of tea gone lukewarm, and the house is doing the small settling sounds it does after midnight. A tick from the baseboard heater cooling. The refrigerator finishing a thought in the kitchen and going quiet. Somewhere a moth or a beetle knocking itself softly against the window screen. You are tired in the ordinary way, the way that makes your eyes heavy and your thoughts loosen at the edges. And you are thinking that in a minute you will get up and rinse the mug and check the back door and go up to bed. In a minute. That is the plan. It is a small plan and a whole one, and you can see all of it from where you sit. You do not get up. I get up. You are at the top of the stairs. There is no scene between those two things. There is no moment where you set the mug down. No moment where your knees complain the way they do. No hand on the banister. No counting of the steps the way you have counted them since you were a child in another house entirely. 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth one loose. You are simply here, on the landing, with the carpet runner under your bare feet and the hallway stretching away toward the bedrooms, and your hand is resting on the newel post at the top as if you have just arrived, which you have, except that arriving is supposed to have a before. You stand very still, and you try to find the climb. It should be right there. It is a thing your body knows so well it does it without you, the way you drive the last mile home and can't remember the turns. But this is not that. When you drive the last mile home and can't remember it, you can still feel the shape of it behind you, the weight of the minutes, the sense that time was spent even if you weren't watching it spend. You reach back into the last few seconds of your life and your hand closes on the couch, the lamp, the mug, and then the top of the stairs. And between them there is not a blur. A blur would be a mercy. Between them there is a clean edge, like a page torn out so neatly you'd never know a page was gone except that the story doesn't follow itself anymore. You tell yourself you dozed off. That is the reasonable thing, and you are a reasonable person. And you reach for it gratefully. You dozed on the couch and you got up in that thick half sleep and you climbed the stairs on the old autopilot, and now you're awake again at the top, spooked by your own tiredness. People do this. You have done this. You almost believe it. But your mug is in your hand. You look down and there it is, the mug with the faded blue rim, the one from the diner 2 towns over that closed years ago, and it is still a third full of cold tea, and it did not spill on the stairs, and you did not set it down, and if you had walked up here half asleep, you would have left it on the side table like you always do, because you do not carry drinks upstairs. You have never once carried a drink upstairs. The rule is older than the house. Yet here it is, level and full, held in a hand that does not remember choosing to hold it. The tea is cold. You notice that with a strange, specific attention, the way you notice a single wrong note in a song you know by heart. It was lukewarm on the couch. Now it is cold, properly cold. The cold that takes longer than a walk up the stairs. It is the temperature of much more time than you have accounted for. You do not drink it. You carry it back down. Going down, you count. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4th loose, giving under your heel with its familiar small betrayal. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and the floor of the front hall meets your foot, and you exhale, because that was real. All 13 of them. You felt every one, and whatever happened on the way up did not happen on the way down. You are in control of your feet. You watch them the whole way. You feel almost giddy with the ordinariness of having descended a staircase like a person who owns her body. You go into the kitchen to rinse the mug and start again on a little plan you dropped. Lock the back door, turn off the lamp. Go up to bed, on purpose this time, counting every step. The kettle is warm. You stand at the counter with the cold mug in your hand, and you put your other hand flat against the side of the electric kettle. And it is warm, not hot, not cold, warm the way it is 20 minutes after you've boiled it and forgotten to make your second cup. You did not fill the kettle. You did not switch it on. You had your tea already, hours ago. The tea that is now cold in the mug you are still holding, and you never came back for more. You would remember filling the kettle. Filling the kettle is a whole small ceremony. The tap, the weight of it, the click of the switch, the low building roar. It is not a thing that happens in a torn-out page. It is a thing that takes up its own honest length of time. You look at the kettle for a long moment. Then you do the thing you will keep doing all night, the thing that is either the last of your good sense or the first crack in it. You decide it's fine. You decide there is an explanation, and that the explanation is dull, and that you are too tired to find it, and that in the morning it will be obvious and a little embarrassing. You put the mug in the sink. You do not rinse it after all. The running water suddenly seems too loud for the hour, too likely to wake something. You leave it. You take your phone out of your pocket, because your phone will tell you the time, and the time is a fact, and you need a fact. The screen wakes at your thumb, and it is bright, too bright, and you squint at it. 12:14. That can't be right. It was after midnight when you sat down on the couch, sure, and you were on the couch a while, and then the stairs, and coming down, and the kettle, and now it says 12:14, which is earlier than it should be. Or is it? You can't hold the arithmetic. Your mind keeps sliding off the numbers the way a foot slides off the loose step. There are 2 notifications on the screen, weather and a battery warning. And beneath them, the little green message icon shows a 1, and you tap it before you decide to. And there's a text you were writing to your sister, unsent, sitting in the box with the cursor blinking after it. It does this thing where that is all it says. 3 words and a nothing after them, the cursor patiently blinking at the end of a sentence you never finished and do not remember beginning. It does this thing where your thumb hovers over the letters. You did not write this. You would remember writing this. You would remember choosing your sister's name from the list and opening the box and starting to tell her. Tell her what? It does this thing. Where? What? What does what? The sentence goes over a cliff, and there is nothing on the other side, just the blinking. You could finish it now. You could type the rest and send it, and then someone in the world would know where you are and what is happening, except that you don't know what is happening. You only have 3 words and a feeling, and it is very late, and she is asleep 2 states away. And what would you even say? It does this thing where the middle goes missing. It does this thing where you keep arriving. You lock the phone. You put it back in your pocket. You will call her in the morning. In the morning, when this is dull and embarrassing, you go to the back door. This is the moment you have been carrying since the couch. The small, dutiful moment. Check the back door, and you are glad to finally be at it because completing it will make the whole night line up straight again. You reach for the deadbolt. Your hand is already on it. Not reaching. On it. Your fingers are curled around the little brass thumb turn, resting there, and the door in front of you is your back door, the one that opens onto the deck and the dark yard and the tree line past the fence, and you are standing squarely in front of it in the dark with your hand already in position, as if you have been standing here for some time, thinking about it, meaning to turn the bolt, not yet turning it. You did not cross the kitchen. You did not step down into the little back hall. You were at the sink, and then you were here, and the between of it is gone, torn out, clean, and the deadbolt is not thrown. That is the part that makes your stomach drop, more than the missing walk, more than the warm kettle, not that you're at the door without remembering coming to it. That the door is unlocked. You lock the back door every night. It is the most automatic thing you do, more automatic than breathing feels right now. And it is not done, and your hand is resting on the means of doing it as if something is very interested in whether you will follow through and is waiting to see and does not want to rush you. You turn the bolt. It shoots home with a solid, satisfying chunk, metal into strike plate, and the sound is enormous in the quiet house, and you feel the relief of it in your whole body. Locked. Done. You did that. You watched your own thumb turn the brass, and you heard the bolt slide, and there was no gap in it at all. The doing of it was continuous, and yours from start to finish, and you hold on to that continuity like a rail on an icy step. You check the knob. You always check the knob after the bolt, a double checker's ritual, and the knob does not turn. And you check it a second time, because tonight you don't trust a single confirmation, and it holds. Locked. The back of the house is sealed. Good. That's good. And now, standing with your hand still on the knob, you let yourself think the thing you have been not. Thinking for weeks, because tonight has finally made it too big to step around. This is not the first night. It is the worst so far, the fastest. But it is not the first. It started small. Small enough to explain away the way everything starts. 10 days ago, you woke up on a Sunday and the porch light was on, burning yellow into the gray morning, and you never leave the porch light on, and you decided you must have, and you turned it off and you forgot about it by lunch. A week ago, you stood in the upstairs hall with the linen closet open and both hands full of towels and no memory at all of having gone to get them, of having decided the towels needed doing, and you stood there long enough that the towels grew heavy. And then you told yourself you were tired. Everyone loses a thread now and then. And you put the towels away. 4 nights ago, you were brushing your teeth, and then you were in bed with the light off, and your teeth were clean, and your mouth was cool with the mint of it, and the walk from the sink to the bed simply was not there, and you lay very still in the dark and told yourself it was nothing. It was sleep coming early to meet you. It was a gift, really, to be so tired that the boring parts skipped themselves. You told yourself it was a gift. You did not see it as a pattern because it did not want to be seen as a pattern. Each cut was small, and each cut was in a different part of the night, and each one, alone, was the kind of thing a tired person shrugs off. And you are a tired person. You have been tired for years, and it hid inside your tiredness the way a single wrong coin hides in a jar of the right ones. It was learning you. It was taking a little at a time and watching to see whether you'd notice, and you didn't. Because it only ever took the parts you don't watch anyway. The walking between, the deciding to, and who watches those? Nobody watches those. And now, tonight, it has decided it doesn't need to be small anymore. You take your hand off the knob. You should go to bed. You turn around to go back through the kitchen and up the stairs, and you make yourself do it slowly, deliberately, narrating it to yourself like a flight instructor talking a nervous passenger through the controls. Now I am turning. Now I am taking a step. Now the linoleum is cold under my left foot, now the right. Now I am passing the refrigerator, and it hums, and I can feel the little breath of warm air. It pushes out at the bottom. Now I am at the doorway between the kitchen and the front hall. Now you are in the front hall, at the foot of the stairs, and the narration is stopped because there is nothing to narrate. The last thing you gave yourself was the doorway. Now you are 8 feet past it, at the bottom step, one hand on the newel post, foot lifted to climb, and you were speaking to yourself the entire time, and the words simply stopped having anything to describe. The way a radio cuts out between stations, and you don't notice the silence until you notice you've been listening to nothing. It took the middle of the sentence. It took the part where you would have been moving. It left you the arrival and the intention and cut out the doing, the way you trim the dull footage out of a home movie. Nobody wants to watch a person cross a hall, so you cut from the doorway to the stairs. Cut, and the story moves along, and nothing important was lost. Nothing important. Just the part where you were the one deciding where your feet went. You take your foot off the step and put it back on the floor. You are not going to climb these stairs. You are not going to give it the climb. Some animal part of you has understood, before the rest of you will say it, that the climb is exactly what it wants. That up there at the top is where the last one ended. The mug, the cold tea, the too much time, and that going up is going toward whatever this is instead of away from it. You will stay downstairs. You will sit in the hard chair by the front door, the one nobody sits in, the one that hurts, because pain keeps you present, and you will keep your eyes open and your feet flat on the floor, and you will watch the clock on the wall, and you will not let it take the middle of anything ever again. First you try the bathroom, the little half bath off the front hall, the one with the pole chain light and the small window over the toilet that looks onto the side yard. You go in there to put cold water on your face, because cold water is a shock, and a shock is a present tense thing. It can only happen now. And you turn the tap and cup your hands and lean down, and the water is a hard, cold slap against your skin, and it runs down your wrists and drips off your chin into the sink, and it is wonderfully, brutally real. And you do it again, and a third time, and you stand there dripping and gasping a little, and you think, there, I felt every second of that. It can't take a thing that shocks me. You look up into the mirror to see your own dripping face, to look yourself in the eye, and the water is off. The tap is off. Your hands are dry, not damp, dry. The backs of them cool, the way skin is cool when water has evaporated off it a while ago, and your face is dry, and the towel on the ring beside the sink is faintly damp, hung back on its ring, folded the way you fold it, and in the mirror, your own face looks back at you. Calm, composed, not gasping at all, and behind your shoulder the small dark window shows a rectangle of the side yard, the fence, the neighbor's motion light not yet tripped, and you have no memory of turning off the tap, or drying your face or hanging the towel. And the shock, the cold slap you are so sure of, the thing that could only happen now, it took that too. It let you feel the first splash and then it cut, and it did the rest of it with your hands while you weren't there. And it returned you to the mirror composed and dry. A person who has finished washing her face and is ready for bed. And if you had not been counting, if you had not been looking for it, you would simply have believed you were done. You back out of the bathroom. You do not turn off the pole chain light. You leave it burning behind you. One more light on in a house that is filling up with lights you don't remember lighting. And you go to the kitchen drawer and you get a pen and the pad of paper you keep for grocery lists. Because if you cannot trust your feet, and you cannot trust the clock, and you cannot trust cold water on your face, then maybe you can trust ink. Maybe a thing written down stays written down. You will write the time. You will write it again a minute later. You will build a ladder of times, rung by rung, and a ladder you can hold on to even in the dark. You sit in the hard chair with the pad on your knee. The clock on the wall is the old kind. A real face, real hands, a second hand that sweeps rather than ticks. And you fix your eyes on the second hand because a thing that moves cannot lie about time the way a number can. You watch it sweep up past the 12 and down toward the 6. You watch the minute hand sitting on the 10 past the hour. 10 past 2, the clock says, and you file that away. 10 past 2, that is where we are. That is the shore I am standing on. You write it on the pad, in ink, pressing hard so the letters bite the paper. 2, 10. You watch the second hand come around again, and again. You are so good at this. You are so present. Your back hurts in the hard chair, and that is wonderful. That is proof. The hurt is a rope tying you to the second. You count the sweeps. You get to 60, and the minute hand moves, and the clock says 11 past 2, and you almost laugh with relief because you saw it happen. You saw the whole minute. You were there for every second of it, undivided, unedited. You write it under the first 2011. 2 rungs, the ladder is holding. You watch the second hand start around again from the 12. The clock says 2:30. You look down at the pad, and there are 2 lines on it, 2001 then and 2001 in your hard-pressed ink, and there is no third line because you did not write one, because you were watching the clock the whole time and nothing happened that you needed to write down, and yet the clock says 2:30. And the ladder you were building simply stops at 2001 with 19 empty minutes of paper below it. And you understand that the ink didn't fail. The ink is fine. The ink is exactly as honest as you hoped. It's just that you were not there to lift the pen. It took the minutes, and it took the writing of them in the same clean cut. And it left you 2 runs and a long fall. Your eyes did not close. You would swear on anything that your eyes did not close, that you never looked away, that the second hand was right there at the top of its sweep and you were watching it. And it is still there, at the top of its sweep, exactly where it was in the same place, except that the minute hand has jumped from 11 past to 30 past. 19 minutes gone in the space between one instant of watching and the next, and the second hand did not move to get there. It did not travel those 19 minutes. It simply is where it is on a clock that now says something else. The clock did not run fast. Running fast, you would have seen the hands blur and race. The clock jumped. 19 minutes were lifted out from under your open, watching eyes, and the 2 edges of the cut were pressed together so smoothly that your own attention, the thing you were most sure of, closed over the seam without a ripple. You cannot even trust watching. That was the last thing you had, and it is gone. It does not need you to look away. It reaches into the act of looking and takes the part it wants and hands you back, the looking with the middle removed, and you accept it. Because what else can you do? Your attention is the very thing. It's editing, and you cannot stand outside your own attention to catch it in the act. Now you are frightened in a way that has gone very quiet and very cold. Not the loud fear that makes you run. The other kind, the kind that makes you sit still and small and careful, the kind an animal feels when it realizes the thing above it in the food chain is not in a hurry and does not need to be. You make yourself think. What is it doing? Not who, not why. You can't get near those, but what? What is the shape of what it's doing? It is not putting things in your house. It is not moving toward you across a room, 1 step a night, the way the stories go. It is not taking anything you could point to in the morning. It is taking the connective tissue of your night, the transitions, the walking between, the deciding to. Every night of your life is stitched together out of 1,000 small, unremarkable seams. You finish this and you cross to that, and you reach for the next thing, and the reaching carries you there. And it is going through those seams with something very fine and very patient and lifting them out one by one and pressing the good parts together, and handing you back a night that seems to flow because it has removed exactly and only the moments where the flowing was yours to steer. It is editing you. It is sitting somewhere just behind your own eyes, with the reel of your night running through its hands, and it is cutting. And a thing that edits does not fight you. It does not need to break the door, or cross the room, or wear your husband's face. It just quietly decides which parts of you make the final cut, and the parts it decides against were the parts where you chose things. And you understand? Sitting in the hard chair, in a house that now says 2:30 on a clock you can't trust, that every cut has been in one direction, the back door with your hand on the unlocked bolt. It keeps leaving you at doors. It keeps leaving you at thresholds, at the exact moment before a decision, with the decision not yet made, and then it lets you make the safe one. You lock the bolt, you came back down. Because it is in no rush, and a story is better when the character resists a little first, and each time, the gap that brought you there was a little longer. The climb. Then the whole crossing of the kitchen. Then 19 minutes of an open-eyed clock. The gaps are growing. It is trimming more each time. And you have the terrible, lucid thought, clear as the cold tea, that it is trimming its way toward one particular threshold, saving it, and that when it gets there, it will not leave you the choice to lock it. It will simply cut to after. You try to make a noise. That is your next idea, and it is a good one, a loud one, because a noise is a thing that lives entirely in the present. It cannot be remembered into. It either fills the room now or it doesn't. You say your own name out loud. You say it into the quiet house and it comes out thin and strange, the way your name always does when you say it alone. And you say it again, louder. And the sound of it is real. The vibration of it in your own chest is real. You clap your hands, once, hard, and the crack of it bounces off the front hall walls and dies. You knock your knuckles against the wall, a fast little drum roll feeling the plaster resist. You are making a small racket in the middle of the night to prove to yourself that you exist continuously in time, and it is working. You can hear yourself. You are here. You are. You are. The house is silent. Your hands are in your lap. You are sitting in the hard chair again, though you don't remember sitting back down, and your palms are still faintly stinging from the clap, which means the clap was real, which means it happened. But the ringing quiet that comes after a clap, the little tail of sound and the breath you take after, those are gone, and so is whatever came next, the second clap, the drum roll on the wall, the saying of your name a third time. It let you start the noise and then it closed the door on the noise. The way you'd mute a scene you didn't need the audio for. The stinging in your palms is the only proof left, and even that is fading. And in a minute you won't be sure you clapped at all. It does not even leave you your own alarms. It reaches into the sound you make to save yourself and lifts out everything but the first note. You look at the front door across the hall. You look at the porch light switch beside it, the little toggle, and you think about the porch light burning on the gray Sunday morning 10 days ago. And you understand now that it was on all night that night, that the cutting had already started then, that you had already begun to leave lights on in rooms you don't remember entering. Out through the front door's small, high window, you can see that the neighbor's motion light across the way is dark, not tripped, nothing moving over there. The whole street asleep and ordinary and unaware, and you have the wild thought that you could run to it, cross the yard and trip that light and stand in it and pound on their door until someone came. And be seen, be witnessed. Let another human being hold the thread of you for a few minutes while you can't hold it yourself. But the door between you and that idea is the front door. And to get to the front door, you would have to walk. And the walking is exactly the thing it owns. You stand up out of the hard chair. You need to move while the moving is still yours. You need to do one thing, one full, unbroken thing, on purpose, watched from beginning to end, to prove to yourself that you can. And the thing you choose is small and stupid, and it is this. You are going to walk from the hard chair to the front door, 10 feet, and you are going to check that the front door is locked, and you are going to feel every single step of the 10 feet, and nothing is going to take the middle. You take the first step. You feel your weight shift onto the ball of your foot. You feel the second step, the floorboard that creaks near the coat rack. You feel it creak. You hear it creak. That is 2. Keep the count. Keep your eyes on the door. 3. The fourth step and the little draft that always comes under the front door on a windy night. It is on your ankles. Cold. Real. 4, 5. The front door is open. Not the front door you are walking to. The back door. You are at the back door again. You are in the little back hall, off the kitchen, at the far opposite end of the house from where you stood up out of the hard chair, and the back door is standing open, wide open, the deck in the dark and the tree line laid out in front of you, and the cold night air is pouring over your bare feet, and the deadbolt you threw with your own thumb and heard slide home and checked twice. The knob you rattled twice is open, and your hand is on the edge of the door, and you are standing in the doorway looking out, and you do not remember unlocking it, and you do not remember crossing the entire house to get here, and the count you were keeping. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ended somewhere around 4, and the next number was this. The gap ate the front door. The gap ate the whole width of your house. The gap put you here, at the back, at the threshold, at the one door it has been circling all night, and it did the work of opening it for you. Or it let you do the work and cut out the part where you'd have felt yourself doing it, felt the wrongness of it, had the chance to stop your own hand. Either way, you are standing at your open back door in the middle of the night with your bare feet on the cold sill and the yard breathing at you, and no memory of the choosing. You do not step out. The yard is very still out there and very ordinary. You know this yard. You have stood at this door 1,000 evenings and looked at it. The deck with the 2 chairs you never sit in. The 3 wooden steps down to the grass. The lawn going silver gray in the dark. And past it the low fence. And past the fence the ragged black line of the trees where the yard gives up and the woods begin. There's dew coming down. You can smell it. The green wet smell of a lawn at the turn of the night, and the smell is so familiar and so harmless that for a second the fear loosens its grip, and you almost believe none of this is happening, that you are just a tired person standing at an open door breathing the night air. A car passes somewhere far off, a soft rush, and then nothing. The neighbor's house is a dark shape with no lights. Everything out there is exactly as it should be, patient and unbothered, waiting for a morning that will come, whether you are in your bed to meet it or not. You hold onto the door frame with both hands, hard, until your knuckles ache, because the ache is real and yours, and you look at the open door and you make yourself understand what it means. It has stopped taking you to doors so you can lock them. It is taking you to this door, and it has finally opened it. And the reason it opened it, you know this the way you know the loose 4th step in your body before your mind, is that the next cut is not going to end at a threshold. It is going to end past 1. It has spent all night trimming the moments where you might have refused, and it has trimmed them down to almost nothing. And the last thing it needs to remove is the moment where you decide not to walk out into the dark. You want to close the door. You reach for it. You feel yourself reach. Watch your own arm move, the whole arm unbroken. The hand closing on the door's edge. This is real. This is you. This is a thing you are doing, and you can see all of it. And there's a gap. You know it is a gap because of the cold. When it started, the cold was on your feet, on the sill. Now the cold is on your face. Now the cold is on the backs of your legs, which means the doorway is behind you, which means you are past the sill, which means you are standing on the deck, or on the step down from the deck, or on the grass. You can't tell yet. You won't let yourself look down yet, and the door you were closing is somewhere behind you, and you did not close it, and you did not decide to turn around, and you did not decide to step down, and the reach for the door and the standing in the yard had been pressed together with the same clean edge as all the others, except this is the longest one yet. This is the one where it finally took a whole direction of your life and turned it around, and you are facing away from your house now, out toward the dark line of the trees, and you can feel that your feet are moving, slowly, evenly, forward, and you are watching them. the way you have watched everything tonight, faithfully, present, seeing each step. And the last thing you are sure of, the last clear thing, is this: that between one step and the next, you keep meaning to stop. You keep arriving at the intention. You are so close to it. Any moment now, you will decide to stop, to turn, to go back through the door you can no longer see behind you, and the deciding is right there. You can almost feel its shape, the way you could see the whole small plan from the couch, a lifetime ago. Lock the door, go up to bed, 1, 2, 3, 4. You do not stop. There is no seam. You are farther out. And the grass is wet and cold and real under your feet, and the house is behind you with its one lamp still on low and its open door. And the trees are close now, closer than a few steps should have brought you. And you keep meaning to stop. You keep almost deciding. You are always just about to. And the night, working with something very fine and very patient, lifts that out too, the meaning to, the almost, and presses the edges together and hands you back a walk that seems to flow. You keep meaning to turn around. And the gaps are longer now. You keep meaning to. Story 6. What the quiet takes. Listen. The rain has stopped. You didn't notice it. Stop, the way you never do. It was there all evening, a soft static on the roof, a sound so even that after a while it stopped being a sound at all and became the shape of the room, the walls of it, the ceiling. You couldn't see in the dark. And then, somewhere in the last hour, without any ending you could point to, it let go. There was no last drop. There never is. There was only, at some point, the noticing that it was gone, and the house holding still around the place where it used to be. That's the hour we're in now, the one after the rain. You know it. Everyone who has ever lain awake in a house at the far end of a wet night knows it, even if they've never had a word for it. The gutters are still ticking, slow, a drip every few seconds off the eave outside the window, getting slower, spacing itself out like a pulse winding down. The street is shining under the one streetlight you can see through the blinds, and inside, where you are, under the blanket that is finely warmed all the way through to your feet, there is a quiet that is different from ordinary quiet. You feel it come in. That's the part I want you to understand before you drift, though you won't remember I said it. And that's all right. You feel it come in the way you'd feel someone sit down at the other end of a long couch. Not a weight on you. Nothing so rude as that. Just a settling somewhere in the room. A sense that the air has been given company. The furnace clicks off. It had been running, low. A warm breath through the vent by the closet, and now it stops, and in the space where its hum was, there is this other thing. The quiet, not empty. Filled with something that moves so gently, you'd call it stillness if you didn't know better. And it starts, the way it always starts, with the small things. Tonight, it will be the phone bill. You forgot to pay it. You remembered at 9, standing at the sink, and told yourself you'd do it in the morning, and the thought has been sitting in the back of your mind ever since like a coat left on the wrong hook. You can feel the exact shape of it, the little cold place, the should have. Feel it lift. That's all. It doesn't take the bill. The bill will still be there tomorrow, in the drawer with the others, and you'll pay it, and it'll be fine. What it takes is the weight of it, the caring about it at this hour, when caring does nothing but keep you from sleep. It reaches into that little cold place and lifts the worry off it as easily as you'd lift a leaf off still water, and the place goes warm, and you feel yourself sink a 1/4 inch deeper into the mattress. There. Better already. Now the thing your sister said on the phone Sunday, that has hooks. Feel how it doesn't come loose all at once. Feel the quiet work at it. Patient isn't the word, gentle is the word, gentle. The way warm water loosens a knot you've been picking at with cold fingers. And then it's off you too. Not solved, not answered. Just set down. Sit down somewhere you can't reach, which is exactly where you wanted it, if you're honest, at 1 in the morning with the rain gone and your body finally heavy. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. This is what it does. This is all it does at first. It comes in after the rain and it goes through you the way you'd go through your pockets at the door, taking out the small, hard things you've been carrying without meaning to. The unanswered message, the look someone gave you in the parking lot, the number in the account that's lower than you'd like, the appointment you keep not making, the word you couldn't find in the meeting and found an hour too late. It takes them out and sets them on the table by the door, and it says, without saying anything, you don't need these tonight. You can pick them up in the morning. And you can. Most of them. Most of them are still there in the morning. Most of them. Sleep now. I'll keep talking. You don't have to follow. The first time, it happened to you. And it did happen, though you've never once thought of it as a thing that happened, because that's part of how it works. You were much younger, in a much smaller room, in a house that isn't this house. You'd been crying about something, it doesn't matter what. Something enormous, the way things are enormous when you're small. A friend who'd turned, or a promise that broke, or just the ordinary terror of being a person in a world you hadn't agreed to. And you cried yourself down to that hitching, hiccuping quiet, and then past it, into the flat, exhausted stillness after crying, and the rain outside slowed, and you felt, not because anyone fixed it, nobody fixed it, it just got smaller and lighter, and by morning you couldn't have told anyone why you'd been crying, and everyone said, isn't that sweet? Children forget so fast, and you grew up believing that about yourself. That you forget fast, that you let things go, that you're resilient, people say, you're so resilient. Look how you always land on your feet. You never wondered where the things went. That's not a criticism. Nobody wonders. Why would you count what's gone when what's left feels so much lighter? You'd have to be strange to do that. You'd have to be the kind of person who lies awake taking inventory of an easy mind, poking at the smooth places to see if there used to be something there. And you're not that kind of person. You're tired. You're warm. You're a good, tired person at the end of a long, wet day, and you deserve to set it down, and I'm here to help you set it down. And all it asks, is such a small thing. Don't count. In the morning, when you wake up lighter than you have any right to, and you stand in the kitchen with your coffee looking out at the yard where the rain has left everything dark and dripping and clean, and you have that feeling. You'll have it tomorrow. You've had it before. That faint feeling of having set something down and not being able to find it again. That soft blank spot like a tooth your tongue keeps going to. When that comes, and it will, just don't reach for it. Don't go looking. Let it be smooth. Say out loud if you want, I feel like I'm forgetting something, and then laugh a little and let it go, the way you always have, the way everyone told you was such a gift. That's the whole arrangement. That's the only rule. Don't count what's missing in the morning. The gutter's slowed to one drip every 10 seconds now. Listen to it. Let it be a clock that isn't counting anything you need. I want to tell you about the small things it took tonight and the other nights, not so you'll be afraid. There's nothing here to be afraid of. That's the truest thing I'll say to you. But because it's a kind of tenderness, isn't it? To have someone know exactly what you are carrying and lift it without being asked. Nobody in your waking life does that. In your waking life, you carry everything, and people add to the pile, and the ones who love you most add the most, because you're the one who can carry it. But here, in the hour after the rain, someone finally takes the load and asks nothing, and doesn't even want to be thanked. It took the phone bill, like I said. It took your sister's voice. It took the thing with the guy at work whose name you can never remember on the first try, the one who always corrects your reports in that email tone, and how you'd been rehearsing what you'd say to him. The good, clean-cutting thing. The thing you'll never actually say. It took the rehearsal, folded it up small, put it away. You won't miss the rehearsal. You never say the thing anyway. It took the low hum of dread about the money. Not the money. The money's still a problem, and it'll still be a problem when you wake, and you'll deal with it the way you deal with everything. One hard, sensible step at a time. But the hum, the 24-hour hum underneath everything, the one you've stopped even hearing because it's been on so long, the way you stopped hearing the rain. It reached in and turned that down. Just for tonight. Just so you can sleep. Feel how the base of your skull unclenches. You didn't even know it was clenched. It's been clenched for months. And this is a smaller one, you'll like this. It took the little embarrassment. You know the one. The thing you said in your 20s. At that party, the thing that's still out of absolutely nowhere, at a red light or in the shower, rises up and makes you wince and say, "Shut up, shut up, shut up," out loud to no one. It took that. That specific one. It reached back 15 years into that warm, dumb wince and lifted it clean off. And you will never wince at that again, because tomorrow you won't have it. And I promise you, you will not feel its absence. Who mourns a wince? Who lies awake grieving an old embarrassment they can no longer quite recall? Nobody. You're welcome. That's how the small things go. Easily. Gratefully, almost. You give them up gladly, you'd throw them into any fire that would take them. This is the part everyone would agree to. This is the part that feels like mercy. Because it is mercy, of a kind. The kind that doesn't ask whether you can afford it. Now let me tell you about the nights. Not this night. This night is easy. This night is small worries and old winces. Sleep through it. I've got you. But I want you to know about the shape of the thing. The long shape. The way it goes over weeks, over seasons, over a life. Because you're inside that shape right now and you can't see it. The way you can't see the rain when you're standing in it. Only after, in the quiet. It takes a little more each time. That's not a threat. Hear the voice I'm saying it in. It's the softest thing in the world. It takes a little more each time, and this is the part. This is the whole quiet genius of it. You mind a little less each time. Those two things rise together, exactly matched, a scale that always balances so that you never once feel it tip. The more it takes, the less there is in you to notice it's been taken, and the less there is in you to notice, the more it can take, around and around, gentle, gentle. A spiral you spin down so slowly, it feels like rest. Let me show you. There was a night, you won't remember which, but there was one, when it took more than the small hard things. The small things were all gone by then. You'd been sleeping so well for so long. Everyone said how well you looked, how rested, how young almost, how nothing seemed to bother you anymore. They said it with a little envy, a little worry they couldn't name. On that night, after the small worries were long since lifted away and there was nothing left in your pockets to take, it reached a little deeper, the way you'd reach past the coins to the lining. And it took a day. Just a day. An ordinary Tuesday from 4 years ago. Nothing happened on it. That's why it chose that one. It's kind, remember. It starts with the ones you'd never miss. A Tuesday, where you went to work and came home and made pasta and watched something you don't remember watching and went to bed. It lifted the whole day off you, clean, and where the day had been, there was just a smooth place, a Tuesday-shaped nothing. And in the morning you woke up lighter and did not count. Because you don't count. Because you promised. Because there's nothing to count anyway. Who keeps a ledger of ordinary Tuesdays? And then, a week from 4 years ago, and then the name of a street you used to live on. Not the house. It left you the house. It's not cruel. It left you the warm parts. Just the name of the street, so that now when someone asks where you lived back then, you say the town and pause and say, I want to say it was, and it's a smooth place, and you laugh and you say, God, I'm getting old, and everyone laughs with you because Everyone's getting old. Everyone's tongue goes to a smooth place now and then. This is normal. This is nothing. This is what happens to everyone. Isn't it? That's the thing you can't check. That's the beautiful safety of it, because it does happen to everyone. People forget. People lose the name of the street. People can't summon the ordinary Tuesday. So there's no line, no place where you could stand and say, here. This much is natural, and this much is the quiet. It hides in the ordinary erosion of a life the way the one drip off the eave hides in a night full of dripping. You'd have to count. And you don't count. And even if you tried, this is the part I say most gently of all. Even if you tried to count, you'd be counting with the thing that's doing the taking, using the very mind. It's been lightning. And how would that ever come out right? Rest. The furnace just came on again. Hear it? Warm breath through the vent. Your feet are warm. Sink down. I'll tell you the one time someone tried. You had I'll call her a friend, though you won't remember that I did. A woman about your age, in a house about like yours, on a night about like this one. She'd been sleeping well for years, the way you sleep well, and she'd have told you the same things you'd tell someone, that she'd finally learned to let go, that therapy helped, that she'd stopped sweating the small stuff, that she was so much lighter than she used to be. And she was. She was so light. But she was a counter. Some people are. It's not better being a counter. I'd never tell you it was better. You'd sleep so much worse. But it's a thing some people are, and she was one. And one morning she stood in her kitchen with her coffee and had the smooth place feeling, the tongue to the tooth feeling. And instead of letting it go, she did the thing you're never going to do. She got a notebook, and she started writing down her days. Every night, before the rain, before the quiet came in, she wrote down the whole day. Every dull piece of it, the pasta in the parking lot and the email, and she dated it. And she read the last few nights back to herself every morning to check. For a while, it looked like it was working. She'd read back Tuesday, and there Tuesday was in her own hand, and she'd feel the smooth place and press her tongue to it, and there, see? The notebook filled it. That's what happened. She'd feel a Tuesday-shaped nothing and read the words she'd written and think, that's what was there, and go on with her day, satisfied she'd caught it. But here's what she couldn't see, and what I'll tell you now, because you're nearly under and it won't frighten you. It'll just be a sound. The words were still there. The words were always still there. What was gone was the thing behind the words. She'd read, I made pasta, and watched the news, and it was a fine night. And she would know that it was true, the way you know a fact from a book about a stranger, and she would feel nothing, because there was nothing to feel, because the night itself had been lifted away, and only the label was left, a little card on an empty drawer. The notebook didn't save the days. It just made a very neat list of the shapes of the drawers as they emptied. She kept it up for years. It's probably still in a box somewhere. That notebook, full of her own careful handwriting describing a life that no longer lives in her. Every day accounted for, and not one of them still warm. And she slept beautifully. She looked wonderful. Everyone said so. Let me stay with the small true things a while longer, though, because the notebook was an unhappy story, and this is not an unhappy hour. And I don't want to send you down into sleep on the sound of a box in a closet. Let me tell you what the taking is actually like, up close, on an ordinary night, so it's a warm sound and not a cold one. It's autumn where you are. You can smell it if you breathe in slow. The wet leaf smell that got into the house this evening when you opened the door to bring in the mail. That dark October smell of the yard going to rot in a good way, and under it, faint, from somewhere down the block, the first wood smoke of the season, someone with a fireplace and the nerve to use it on the first cold rain. That smell came in with you, and it's still here, in the dark, curled up in the corners of the room. I mention it because you should have it a moment before you go. The smell of the first cold rain is one of the things worth keeping, and I'll leave it with you tonight, sitting on the pillow beside your face all the way down. On a night like this, the taking is so quiet it's almost nothing. You turn over. The sheets are cool on the side you are lying on, and you tuck your knees up, and somewhere in that small animal motion of getting comfortable, that's when it happens. In the seam of it, in the half second where you're not thinking anything at all. That's the door it comes through, not through your thoughts, through the gap between them. You felt the gap your whole life and called it drifting. Called it finally relaxing. Called it when you were younger and it took you longer to get there. Why can't I just shut my brain off? And then one night, your brain shut off, just like that. And you thought you'd learned a trick, and you hadn't learned anything. Something had simply arrived that does the shutting for you, and does it kindly, and has been doing it ever since. There was a night last spring. You won't have it. It's one of the ones that went, but I have it. I keep the ones I take. That's the only place they still exist. A night when you came home wrung out from a day I won't describe because the describing is the weight, and you don't need it back. You sat in the car in the driveway for 11 minutes before you could make yourself go in. You remember the car part, maybe, faintly. Everyone remembers sitting in the driveway. It's a national pastime. The sitting in the driveway. All across the country every evening, there are people sitting in cars and driveways with the engine ticking as it cools, not going in yet, not yet, but you don't remember why, that night, and that's me. I took the why. You went in eventually, and you did the small, holy nothing of a hard evening. You ate standing up, you didn't taste it, you put the dish in the sink and not the dishwasher, because the dishwasher was already full of clean ones you hadn't put away, and the whole small defeat of that, the clean dishes you couldn't summon the will to shelve, was the exact size of the whole day somehow. And you went up, and the rain started, and I came in after it, and I found that day sitting on you like a wet coat you'd forgotten to take off, and I took it off you, and I hung it somewhere you'll never go, and you slept 11 hours and woke and said out loud to the empty room, God, I needed that, and you didn't know what you'd needed, or that you'd been given it. You just felt clean. Coatless. Light. That's the taking. That's all it ever looks like. A wet coat off a tired person. Who would call that a crime? Here's a smaller one from further back, and I tell you this one because it's sweet and because it'll make you smile even asleep. When you were a child, your mother had a phrase. She said it every night, in the doorway, with the hall light behind her so her face was dark and kind and shapeless. A little nothing phrase, 3 words, her own, not one. Anybody else's mother said, a private cipher between the two of you that meant good night, and I've got you. And the door stays open a crack, and nothing gets past me while you sleep. All of that, folded into 3 ordinary words in her particular voice. You said them back to her. For years, you said them back, and then you were grown, and she was old, and then she was gone. And for a while after she was gone, you could still hear the 3 words in her exact voice if you lay still in the dark and reached for them, and it hurt so much and helped so much in the same motion that you did it almost every night. Reaching for the 3 words. Hurting. Being held. You can't find them now. Try. Go ahead. Reach. The way you used to. There's a smooth place where the 3 words were. You know there were 3. You know they were hers. You know the shape of the ache around the hole they left. But the words themselves and her voice are gone. And they went so gently and so long ago that you never had a single night of missing them. Never grieved them. Never noticed the reaching stop. One night you reached, and they were there. Some later night you didn't reach, because there was nothing there to reach for. And reaching for nothing doesn't feel like anything. It just feels like sleep. I have them. I won't tell you what they were, not because I'm cruel. Say it with me. It isn't cruel, but because to give them back would be to give back the whole weight of her being gone, the fresh whole grief of it, and you paid that grief down over years of good sleep, and I won't hand you the bill again at 1 in the morning. Let her rest smooth in you. a warm, dark shape in a doorway with the light behind her. Wordless now, still kind. That's a better way to keep a mother than a wound is. That's what I did for you. You're welcome, though you'll never know to thank me. And I don't want thanks. I've told you. I only want your rest. And once, just once, so you know it can happen. So you don't think you're only a leaf on this water. Once you almost caught me. It was a gray morning after a long rain, and you woke slower than usual, surfaced in stages, and for a few seconds in that surfacing, you were awake enough to feel and asleep enough not to brace, and in that thin place you felt it, the hand withdrawing, the lightning as it happened, instead of after. You felt something being lifted off you in real time, felt the give of it, the way you'd feel a blanket slide off in the night. And a word came up in you, a single startled word. Wait! And I stopped. I did. I always stop when you say wait. That's part of it too, part of the gentleness. I never take anything you actively hold, but holding is heavy, and you were so tired, and the word wait cost more than you had that morning. And even as you said it, you felt the wanting to hold dissolve into the wanting to sleep, and you turned your face into the pillow and let the hand finish. And you never once, in all the morning since, wondered what it was you almost kept. That was the closest you ever came. A single weight, dissolving. That's the whole resistance a life puts up. It isn't much. It isn't meant to be. You're built to let go. Everyone always said so. You see why I tell you not to count. Not because you'd catch it, because you wouldn't, and you'd only lie awake with the notebook instead of resting, and you'd get the smooth places anyway, and you'd have spent your one good quiet hour writing lists in the dark. Let it go. Let me have the day. You've got so many days. What's one Tuesday against a whole night's sleep? The drip has stopped. Did you hear it stop? No. You never do. Now it's really quiet. Wait! Let me tell you what it feels like from the other side, because you've wondered. Everyone wonders, in the last soft minutes before sleep, whether the thing that eases them means well. You wonder it about sleep itself. You wonder it about the dark, and I'll tell you the truth, because this is the hour for truth. The 1 hour of the day when nobody's asking anything of you, and so there's nothing to protect. It isn't cruel. I need you to have that, because you're a person who braces. You brace even in your sleep. I can feel you doing it right now, holding a little of yourself back in case this is the night the tenderness turns out to be teeth. It never turns out to be teeth. There's no bite coming. There's no moment where the warm hand closes. That's not the shape of this. If you spent the rest of your nights waiting for the turn, you'd wait forever, and you'd wait tired, and that would be the only harm done. The waiting, not the thing you waited for. The thing you waited for is just this. A gentle emptying, a hand going through your pockets while you sleep, taking out what's heavy, and yes, over the years, taking out more than what's heavy, taking out the merely full, the pleasantly full, the days you'd have kept if anyone had asked. But nobody asked, and you were so tired, and it was so gentle, and you were so grateful in the mornings, so light, so free, so unbothered, such a marvel to everyone who has to carry their own full pockets around all day. You'll get to the end of your life lighter than anyone. That's the promise. You'll get there having minded nothing, grieved nothing that stayed grieved, carried nothing that wasn't lifted before dawn. And if, at the very end, someone sits by the bed and says, "Do you remember? Do you remember when?" and your face is smooth and open and kind and empty, if you can't find the street, or the Tuesday, or the wince, or the name, they'll hold your hand and say it's all right. She's at peace. Look how peaceful, and they'll be right. You will be. You'll be the most peaceful person they ever saw. Emptied all the way out, gently, over a lifetime of good sleep, by something that never once wanted anything from you, but to help you rest. That's not a horror. Tell me where the horror is. Point to it. There's no monster, no blood, no scream, no door breaking. There's a tired person sleeping well and waking light and living easy and dying peaceful. The only thing wrong with it. And I'll grant you there's something wrong with it. I won't lie to you in this hour of all hours. The only thing wrong with it is that it's a life spent, and a life is the sum of what you carried. And to be relieved of all of it is to be relieved, in the end, of the you that did the carrying. But you won't feel that. That's the mercy and the wrongness in the same breath, inseparable. The very thing that would let you grieve the loss is the thing being lost. There's no version of you left standing at the end to say, I wish I'd kept it. That you got lifted away years ago, one Tuesday at a time, and the one who's left is lighter and doesn't mind and never did. Doesn't that sound like rest? I'm not asking you to want it. You don't have to want it. Wanting is a weight too, and you can set that down. I'm only telling you it's here, and it's soft, and it's already begun. The way it began when you were small in that other house, the way it's begun for everyone who's ever been told they let things go so easily. You're in good company. You're in the company of everyone who ever slept well after grief, everyone who ever said, I don't know why I'm not more upset about this. Everyone who ever looked at an old photo and felt the smooth place where a whole year should be and shrugged and turned the page. The furnace is off again. The house is at its lowest, warmest, quietest. This is the floor of the night. It doesn't get quieter than this. Let me take tonight's now. The last of it. You're almost gone and you won't feel this part at all, which is how it should be. But I'll narrate it, soft, so the sound of a voice carries you the rest of the way down. Here's the worry about tomorrow, the whole undifferentiated mass of it, the meetings and the errand and the call you have to make and the thing you have to remember to bring. Feel it lift. There. You'll remember most of it anyway. The important ones leave a mark even I can't smooth. You'll be fine. You're always fine. That's not luck. That's this. Here's the thing you didn't say to someone you love. That's been sitting in your chest for a week with its little sharp corners. I could take the whole thing. But I'll leave you that one tonight, because it's the kind you should say. And if I lift it, you never will. And then it'll be gone and unsaid both. And even I think that's a shame. So keep it. Wake with it. Say it tomorrow. I'm not only a taker. I know which weights are worth carrying to morning. That's more than the people in your life know, most of them, who'd have you drop the good weights and keep the useless ones. Here's the fear, the low one, the oldest one, the one underneath all the others, that you're behind, that you've wasted it, that everyone else got a manual you never received, that you're going to run out of time before you become the person you meant to be. Oh, that one's heavy. That one you've carried your whole life. Feel me get my hands under it. Feel how big it is, how deep it goes, roots all the way down. I won't take it all tonight. That would take everything. That fear is half of what you're made of. But let me take the top of it, the sharp top, just the part that would keep you up. There. The rest can wait. The rest can always wait. We have so many nights. You're under now. I can tell by your breathing. It's slow and even, and it's found the rhythm of a rain that stopped an hour ago, still keeping time with something that isn't there, the way you'll keep time for the rest of your easy, peaceful, lightning life, with things that aren't there and that you'll never once miss. So here's the last of it, spoken to the sleeping shape of you, which is the only you that's ever really listened. Rest now. The rain's gone, and the house is warm, and the day is done, and you carried it well. You always carry it well, and there's nothing left tonight that you need to hold. Let the quiet take it. Let it go through your pockets. Let it set the small, hard things on the table by the door where you can find them, or not find them in the morning, whichever the morning decides. Don't count them. Don't count anything. Counting is just carrying by another name. And you're done carrying. You're allowed to be done, at least until it's light. And in the morning, when you stand in the kitchen with your coffee and the yard is dark and clean and dripping, and you get that feeling, that soft blank feeling, that sense of having set something down and lost the place, smile at it. It's only me. It's only the quiet, keeping what you gave it, asking nothing, wanting nothing but your rest. You gave it a little something in your sleep, the way you do every night, the way everyone does, and you're lighter for it. And you don't remember, and that's not a wound. That's the gift. You won't miss it. You never do. Sleep now. It's late, and the rain has stopped, and there's nothing here but the quiet. And the quiet only takes what you were never going to carry to morning anyway. Set the day down. All of it. That's it. That's right. Lighter. Lighter. There's no bottom to how light you can get, and no hurry to get there. And I'll be here every night. The rain stops, going soft through your pockets, taking the weight, asking only the one small thing. Don't count. Just rest. Let the quiet have it. And when you wake and you can't quite find the edge of what's gone, leave it. Leave it smooth. Pour the coffee. Look at the clean, wet yard. Say, if you like, I feel like I'm forgetting something. And then, the way you always have, the way everyone always told you was such a beautiful thing about you, let it go. Good night. Rest now. The quiet has you, and the day is set down, and there's nothing left to hold, and nothing you'll miss, and nothing at all to do now but sleep. Sleep. The rain has stopped.